Well, Ramie, the NBA is back, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, kind of. It's like half an NBA team.
What is happening?
Half an NBA game, I should say.
So the good news is the Trailblazers are actually leaving Portland. So
that is good.
That's good.
Good for them. They've been sitting on that plane for a long time.
They will be off the tarmac at some point momentarily if they haven't left already. The bad news is when the Blazers get here, nobody's pretty much going to be playing tonight at Golden One. No Damian Lillard, no Jeremy Grant, no Nurkic, no Simons.
It's a G League team showing up to the Golden One Center.
Hey,
tonight.
if you were excited for Shaedon Sharpe before the draft, this is your night.
This is your night. I really liked Shaedon Sharpe before the draft. I was a big Shaedon Sharpe guy. So
this is your opportunity. This is what you've been waiting for.
They arrived at the airport yesterday at 2:45 and stayed on the plane until 10 p.m.
Brutal.
Then headed home, then returned to the airport at 9 a.m. today, sat on the tarmac again for a while till they just took off within the last hour or so. Have you ever been in that situation or no?
I've had to sit on the tarmac for a bit, not for hours at a time.
That's never happened to me, and I don't understand why. I didn't mean to start the show here, but this thought just occurred to me. Why do I have to sit on this plane while y'all figure it out? Pull it up to the gate. Let me get off. Let me go get something to eat and a drink in the airport terminal. And let's fire this thing up when we're ready to go and let me know.
I guess it's maybe because they're like, hey, at any time we could leave.
Stop it.
Literally
they were on the runway for 7 hours, dude.
Yeah, it's crazy.
7 hours.
7 hours is ridiculous.
That's a long time.
And then you got to go back the next day and sit there for more and more and more of that. Oh, my God. Awful. So, hey, we'll have a basketball game tonight at Golden One. That is great news. NBA is back.
Yeah, I'll take whatever I can get.
See a lot
whatever I can get.
You'll see Shaedon Sharpe and a lot of reserves out there for the Blazers tonight during the game. 25 games left. This is the first of 25 that is left for the Kings, Ramie, and it's going to be a tough road, my friend, a very tough road. Tom Dierberger from NBC Sports Bay Area wrote about the schedule. The Kings have the most total games remaining at 25. They have the most back-to-backs left on their schedule. That's 6 among all Western Conference teams. So the most games and the most back-to-backs. If you're wondering, the Kings are 5-4 on the second night of back-to-backs this year.
That's not bad.
Not bad. Not bad. The Kings also own the second hardest remaining strength of schedule in the West, as their upcoming opponents have combined for a .520 win percentage. 10, Ramie, of their final 25 games are against teams currently in a top 6 spot in their conference. Celtics, Bucks, Nuggets. They play twice against KD and the Suns. 15 of the Kings' final 25 games are against teams at 500 or better. Now, we've talked about this in the past, but to remind people where the Kings are, playing teams that are 500 or above, they're 11-17 on the season. That is the second worst record of all current NBA playoff seeds. So the top 12 teams, top 6 from the East, top 6 in the West, you own the second worst record amongst those 12 teams against teams that are 500 or better.
This is a tough road to hoe for the Kings here if they're going to close this thing out strong. And I would like to see them stay in the top half of the Western Conference, Nick. I feel like the Suns and Kevin Durant back any day now. They're like Thanos. They're inevitable at this point. You know what I mean? That they're going to, I know you don't get that reference.
I was going to say, I don't know what you mean, but I'll go with it.
Most of the people in our listening audience do, because the Marvel movies are very popular. Yeah. They're like Thanos, and they are inevitable at this point, and they will surpass you for the 3 seed if Kevin Durant comes back healthy and can stay healthy. I'd like to see him stay in the top half, but man, when you lay out what you just laid out, Nick, and I had a lot of those notes on the Kings schedule in my notes here too. Is it being too pessimistic to say I just hope they stay in the playoff and don't fall into the play-in picture with the mountain that they have to climb here?
Well, I mean, it's a subjective
part of the schedule.
It's how you feel about this team. If you feel like they'll be fortunate to stay in, then that's how you feel. I mean, I think as long as they play 500 basketball, they should be a playoff team, unless the other teams below them play at such a level above and beyond that and they leapfrog the Kings, they should be good. But everybody knows this is going to be a very difficult challenge, including De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, I would think, like I said yesterday, De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis, they got to lead the charge, man. This is when the best players in the league turn up the intensity and turn up their game. And that's what it's going to take for them to, they're going to need, not that they're the only ones who got to take their game to another level, but they're going to need to lead that charge and sort of set that example of, as good as we've been, we need to play an even better brand and higher level of basketball here for the last 25 games.
No doubt about that. Here's Foxy.
I'm going to come out and do what we've been doing all season. I've offensively continue to play the way that we're playing, continue to share the ball, have fun. And then defensively, we have to be able to buckle down and get stops, especially trying to prepare, for a playoff series.
So he knows, Domas knows, Brown knows, I know, you know, JJ, Simone, they know. It's going to be, again, a difficult challenge. But I ask you, Ramie, and I want to ask the people out there listening to the program and watching us on YouTube, youtube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. Hey, how are you? Don't forget to give us that thumbs up. We appreciate it. 916-339-1140 is the text line. Phone number is 1-800-920-1140. What are your expectations? Now that we're getting ready for game one of the 25 that are left in this regular season, what are your expectations for the Kings post-All-Star break?
In the 25 games, with everything you just laid out, Nick, again, I feel like I'm the guy who said they're going to win 50.
You were that guy.
I went on the record and said they're going to win 50.
You want to backtrack now?
I guess I can't because it's on the record. There's no pulling it off the record. You know what I mean? But if they're above 500 in these last 25 games, looking at it now from the perspective that we're looking at it, I'm going to be good with that. And wherever that lands them, they don't exist in a vacuum. You know what I mean? That the Clippers are a very good team when they're healthy. I talked about the Suns, the Mavericks adding Kyrie Irving. Those are three teams that are right on your heels right now in the 4 through 6 seed. I feel like if they can be above 500 for these last 25 games, you're probably finishing in the top 6. You're going to finish with 45 wins, which is wildly above most people's expectations coming into this season. And so I'd be happy both with the stretch, the closing stretch here, the last 25 games, and when we step back and look at the season as a whole, I think we'll still look at it as a huge success for the Kings if they just finish above 500 in these last 25 games. So get me 13. Get me 13 of these last 25 and let the rest of the chips fall where they may.
And Patrick Donaldson brings up a point that I had made before the All-Star break when we were talking about how difficult of a challenge this is going to be for the Kings to hang on to that playoff spot. And if the Kings play 500 basketball, they should be good. They should be safe. And Patrick brings up something that we had talked about before, but I'll bring it up again here because it is a great point. You know, a lot of the teams below the Kings are going to be playing against each other. So how many games do they play against each other? You obviously have to walk away with a loser from those games. So it's not like all of these teams below the Kings are going to be playing the bad teams in the NBA. There's going to be a lot of, tit for tat, a lot of punches thrown back and forth between these teams that are trying to fight for their playoff and play-in lives. The goal is to keep the playoff seed. That's it. Like I honestly, and I don't know if other people feel this way, I feel like as long as the Kings get into the playoffs, this is a win. And I'm not talking about a play-in.
Top 6.
I do think a play-in would be, given where they're at right now, would be disappointing. Big picture, if you looked at it from the beginning of the year, of course you would take it. I had this team winning 37 games. But right now, where they are, the goal is to make the playoffs. And as long as they finish in the top 6, everything else to me is gravy. That was the first step in this developmental process to get into the playoffs. If they can give us that, then I think they've accomplished something.
And I don't know if this is even mathematically possible because, like you said, a lot of these teams that are chasing the Kings are going to be playing each other and beating each other up and making it hard to climb the standings. But let's say it's 45, 46 wins to end the season. That somehow drops them into the play-in. You're disappointed in a 45, 46 win season just because it landed them in the play-in and didn't get them a playoff spot? That's why I'm saying finish above 500 in these last 25. That gets you 45 wins. But I think if they do that, they're in.
You think they're in?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I think if they play 500 basketball, if they finish around 45 wins, I think they get in. I think they're a playoff team because I do think those other teams.
Both those things aren't true. It's 45 wins, but they're a play-in team.
I'll reassess it. I mean, I'll have to look at it. And if there's teams below them, if they slide down to, say, the 7th seed because the teams below them post-All-Star break play out of their minds, then okay. Then that's something we can have a conversation about. But if the Kings go about 500 over the rest of this schedule, we just laid it out. I just laid it out for everybody. This is a very daunting task for this team. If you could finish 500, I think you've accomplished something. You've accomplished something significant. And I can't necessarily sit there and kill the Kings to go 500 with the second toughest schedule in the Western Conference remaining if the other teams are just out of their minds and they played a little bit of an easier schedule and took advantage of it. I would also expect an injury or two. I'm not wishing ill will on anybody, but we talked about this a little bit yesterday, Ramie. This team was very healthy, all things considered. Domas was injured. He broke his freaking thumb, as we know, but it was an injury he could play through. I'm talking about expect an injury or two where you might miss a guy for a couple of weeks. They were fortunate with the Malik Monk injury because of when it happened. He had the All-Star break to get better.
Yep.
So I would expect that as well. And I would also expect struggles on defense because I don't think this team is going to wake up tomorrow and be a much better defensive team. I just don't see that happening this season. Hopefully I'm wrong. I don't see it happening.
There was a stat. I know we're going to talk about that Mike Brown article, the one-on-one that he did for The Athletic. I'm trying to find it right now. You just reminded me of it right when you said what you just said. Their starters, their starting five have played more minutes together than I think anybody in the league this year. That's how healthy they've been. I'm trying to find the exact number, but I'm pretty sure that's what it said in that article, that their starting five has played the most minutes together in the entire NBA, maybe the Western Conference, but I'm pretty sure it said the entire NBA, which is that illustrates, that puts into numbers in black and white what you're talking about, Nick, in terms of how fortunate they've been with the health that they've had. Injuries are almost always, and big injuries, major injuries that either take out major pieces of your team or take out lesser pieces, but for a longer time. Injuries that have a significant impact on your roster are almost a norm in any sport, and especially one where you play 82 games over the course of a season. They have been fortunate, or you could use the word lucky when you talk about the health that they've had this season, and you do have to wonder how long that lucky streak holds up.
All right, you've heard from us. We now want to hear from you. Your expectations for these next 25 games for the Kings. 916-339-1140 is the text line. 1-800-920-1140 is the phone number. YouTube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. You can also chat us there. Give us the thumbs up.
They've played 661 minutes together. That's the most of any five-man unit in the NBA.
Well, there you have it.
So I didn't dream that up.
So we'll get your expectations on the next 25. What would be a win for you, big picture? Also coming up in 90 seconds, for the first time in a long time, the Kings are the hunted.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports. Sactown Sports goes. One mile at a time during the afternoon drive. Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
It is 2:15 on this Thursday. Time check brought to you by Coastside Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. A quick NFL note before we get right back to the Kings talk, and we'll also be joined by Chris Herring of SI to talk about the Kings and the NBA coming up in about 15 minutes. Bobby Wagner was released just moments ago by the LA Rams. This is not too surprising. The Rams are in cost-cutting mode. There's a thought that Jalen Ramsey's on the trade block. He could be traded in the next few weeks. So Bobby Wagner has been released, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. I would imagine a contending team would be very interested in Bobby Wagner. He looked like he still had some gas left in the tank. Guy plays a ton of snaps, hardly ever misses games. So we'll see where Wagner ends up, but he's been released by the Rams.
And a lot of experience in big games, which is something that can be invaluable in any sport when you're talking about playing playoff games, playing high pressure games, and in the regular season. That's something that's worth something to teams that are in contention or trying to be right now.
All right, let's get to some of this reaction on YouTube. Also, the phone lines are open. We'll get to you in a moment as well. 1-800-920-1140 is that phone number. YouTube chat, youtube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. Give us a thumbs up if you like what we're doing here at Sactown Sports. Rich Ficker says he's with you, Ramie. 13 more wins at least, 5th seed, as we get your reaction on what you expect here in these final 25 games.
Yeah, I'll take that, man. Finish in the top 6, but more importantly, just finish strong. Win the games you should win here down the stretch. Finish above 500. And like I said, the rest of the chips fall where they may fall. That might leave you outside the top 6, but likely not.
Cole G, sounding a little similar to me last segment when I talked about how good those teams underneath the Kings would have to be to leapfrog them as long as the Kings play 500. Look, if the Kings completely fall apart and win 5 games, they go 5-20, it's a different conversation.
Why would you even speak that out loud?
I don't expect that to happen.
You might have just manifested it.
No, I'm explaining the context behind Cole G's thoughts here. It's going to have to be 3 teams that go on a crazy hot streak to drop the Kings to 6th. That's not likely considering how competitive the West is. There are only 2 bad teams. I agree with Cole G, and that's why I say playoffs. Get to the playoffs, and I think that's a win. And I think as long as you play 500 basketball, I'd say you're pretty safe. It's not a guarantee, but I'd feel pretty safe about that. Yama Sultanti says that should be the goal in my eyes, get to the postseason and learn how to improve, especially on defense. Probably limited how much you can improve defensively in the offseason. I don't know if he meant postseason, but I do think you are somewhat limited how much you can improve defensively. Unless he said he means you're not playing games. I think you can improve in the offseason if you go out and get some defensive stoppers.
That would help.
Athletic big man who can block some shots when Domas is sitting.
Getting better defensive players will make you better defensively.
All right, we'll get to the idea. We'll get to the idea of the Kings being hunted for the first time in a long time as well. But first, let's go out to Mike on the phones. He wants to talk Kings. Hey, Mike.
How's it going, guys?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Listening to the show, love it. I just wanted to ask you guys, if the Kings switch it up and have Holmes and Sabonis play as starters, what do you guys think about that? And another thing, I just think it's kind of BS that Kevin Durant just jumped from wonder team to wonder team. What do you guys think about that? And last thing. I think the Kings are going to be 5. Hopefully they stay between 3 and 5. And that's all I got to say.
All right, Mike, thanks. We appreciate you, man. Kind words for the show and listening to us. Great job. So, KD jumping from team to team. Look, he's a superstar. That's how this league works. Player power, yada, yada. That's going to continue to happen.
Whatsoever.
And I would also say I don't blame him for this one.
Right.
He wanted to get out because Kyrie was going bananas again. And then, they put it back together. They won 18 of 20. KD got hurt because he's in his mid-30s. And then Kyrie requested a trade and was dealt. And then KD looked around and said, okay, well, I got like 3-4 really good years left, hopefully. I'm not going to sit here and play with Mikal Bridges and get beat by the Bucks, Celtics, and Sixers the next 3 years.
I've said this before, and it's usually pertaining to management, but I always preface it with in any field. This doesn't even just apply to sports. Everybody makes mistakes. The smartest, most successful people are the ones who recognize them and get out of it as quickly as possible. That goes for players too. Like Kevin Durant got to Brooklyn and I think quickly realized, tried to make it work, but quickly realized with Kyrie and everything else that thing was just a mess. The Nets are a dysfunctional organization, and Kevin Durant realized it and wanted better and wanted out, wanted to go somewhere he could succeed. I don't begrudge him for that.
And as far as Domas and Holmes playing together, neither guy can shoot well enough from distance to make that work. I don't think they're a fit together on the floor. And
it's somebody who can stretch it.
Yeah, it's been a big struggle for Holmes. And I said this during our talks yesterday. I'd give Holmes another shot to see if you can get something out of him That would mean you tweak the offense a little bit when he's on the floor, but you might want to look into that to see if it can change anything. Meanwhile, Cattles, Ramie, Sactown Sports here on Thursday. For the first time in a long time, Ramie, the Kings are the hunted. And Mike Brown had a fantastic interview with Anthony Slater in The Athletic today. And he said, quote, the real season doesn't start until after the All-Star break. The teams that know they don't have a chance mail it in. And the teams that do have a chance turn it up a notch or two. For us, sitting in this spot means we have a target on our back. We are the hunted right now. I'm not sure where we sit as a team because this is the first time we've gone through this being the hunted. He continued, it's easy to get into the upper echelon of your conference in the regular season. You got to have a little luck. If you're healthy, you play hard, you're organized, you have a chance. Our schedule, if you look at the winning percentage, has been favorable. So this is the coach, not me, not Ramie. The coach is telling you we've had some good luck in the first half, pre-All-Star break, including the schedule. There are some things that were in our favor. These last 25, we're going to go through these games experiencing something we've never experienced together. He says these teams are gunning after us. They are coming. For the first time, this is a team that's being hunted, Ramie. Mic check.
Mic check. Had to clear my throat. Sorry. I don't know if I'd call them the hunted or if that's how I'd word. I have no problem. This is semantics now between the way me and Mike Brown would look at this thing. But I would definitely say like you're moving up a weight class. You know what I mean? You're gonna face better punches here down the stretch than what you've seen before. I don't know that they're the hunt. I don't know if you're the hunted unless you're either the champ and the old saying, the Ric Flair expression, to be the best, you got to beat the best. Woo! I think then you have a target on your back and you're the hunted. I think if you put a target on your back like John Morant did by saying we're good in the West, we got nothing to worry about out here, I think then you're kind of the hunted. I don't know if I'd call the Kings the hunted, but I get where Mike Brown is coming from. And it's a point I made yesterday that down the stretch here, they're facing a lot of teams that have as much on the line, if not more than they do, and are going to be playing with an extra level of urgency and desperation. And like I said, you're going to be facing bigger and better punches than maybe what you've faced to this point before. I don't know that I'd call them the hunted necessarily.
Everything intensifies. Everything intensifies over the final 25 games as you get closer to the postseason. It's something I've been stressing the last month or so. Things change, man. And for this team, a couple of things I'm looking for. The offensive efficiency against better defenses, more focused defenses. You've been one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the league for the most part pre-All-Star break. Can you carry that over post-All-Star break when the opposition is more focused and in tune defensively? Secondly, your issues defensively against more focused offenses and healthy teams and better teams. Your defense hasn't been great pre-All-Star break against the schedule that was favorable, as Coach Brown called it. Moving forward, you've got a tough schedule against some really good offensive teams. Is your defense going to be able to be any better against those teams? And I want to see who has the quote-unquote dog mentality on this team, right?
Yep.
Who steps up to this challenge, who stares it in the face and says, I'm ready. I am absolutely
That's why I
ready.
wanted Pat Bev. He instantly brings that dog with him and brings it out of the people around him.
SI's Chris Herring joins us to discuss the Kings and more coming up next.
The Sacramento Kings return from the All-Star break looking to keep a grip on the third seed in the West when they
Kings after nearly 24 hours of weather uncertainty. But star guard Damian Lillard is unlikely to play per Chris Haynes. Keep it locked right here to Sactown Sports as we unpack all of the Beam Team coverage leading you up to game night right after Cattles and Ramie on Sactown Sports. I'm Simone. Those are your headlines. Chris Herring of Sports Illustrated joins the fellas right now on Cattles and Ramie.
Live and local in the afternoon.
They always keep you on edge.
Cattles
and Ramie
on Sactown Sports.
Let's get right to it. Continue our Kings talk, NBA talk, Western Conference talk with Chris Herring from Sports Illustrated. He, of course, is on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Chris, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time today. How surprised are you that the Kings sit in the 3 spot as we begin this final stretch?
I think they'd be lying if they said they weren't surprised. So you can count me in that group. It's just been a really nice season for them so far, though. Seemingly no one with the team, counting the chickens before they're hatched as far as assuming this is a done deal. It's been too long in Sacramento for anybody to make that assumption that it's locked in now. And the Western Conference standings are really tight, but it's a team that has played, some of the best offense in the league, and a team that I think has had just enough in the closing moments with Fox and everybody else to really close the door on teams that were in the close in the late stages of games. So it's been really fun to watch. I think it's been good for the league to see a team that was so strong in the early 2000s and before that to kind of have a resurgence here. And I know it's obviously been really good for the fan base to finally feel like their hope has been validated somewhat.
There's a parity in the NBA, and especially in the Western Conference this year, that we haven't seen in a long time. Do you think that's here to stay? Do you think that's something that will last, or do you chalk this up to injuries and things kind of go back to normal of the haves and the have-nots?
Well, I think Phoenix probably has some thoughts about whether parity will exist for a long time in light of the Kevin Durant trade. But look, I mean, yeah, I think this was kind of the league's utopia on some level. On the one hand, it is that you have so many teams bunched up. I mean, certainly around where the Kings are in the standings. But then when you scroll a little bit further down, too, if you look where the Warriors are and the Lakers are and Oklahoma City is and all those teams, there's so many teams bunched right there between like the 9th and the 12th, 13th place, all within 2-3 games. Minnesota, Portland, you name it. So there's a lot of parity. I think I saw a statistic saying that this is the kind of the smallest gap between the worst team and the best team net rating wise, just as far as how many points they score per 100 possessions and how many points they win by per 100 possessions. That the Celtics are the least dominant team in the last 20 years. Could be the best team in the league at this point in the year. But it'll be interesting long term, despite the fact that I think the league wants that. You've seen that with the draft lottery and then flattening the lottery odds. But generally speaking, the league is at its strongest ratings-wise when there is a dominant team, when you have the Warriors, when you have the Bulls, when you have the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq. So it would be really interesting to see, for the next few years, to just see different teams winning titles, to see the standings be as flat as they are right now and really no team jumping out to a big conference standings lead or anything like that. But I will say this, if that's going to be the case, I think it's wonderful that Sacramento is in the mix where they are and back in a playoff conversation. It's good for basketball.
SI's Chris Herring is with us here on Cattles and Ramie Sactown Sports. Chris, you recently wrote about the second half in a preview of the Western Conference, and one of your bigger questions was, how will the Kings fare against good competition? They obviously are 11-17 against teams that are 500 or better. And looking at this stretch of the final 25, Chris, what are reasonable expectations, do you think, for this basketball team?
I'll put it this way. I mean, if they can finish anywhere near 500 for these last 25, if that means 12-13, if that means 11-14, I think they're fine because they have done the work to get themselves ahead in the standings. They have a little bit of cushion now. They probably won't finish in the 3 seed if that happens. But again, who went into the season thinking that the Kings would be a 3 seed?
Right.
even recently, I'm working on a longer term feature and a magazine feature about the Kings. Hopefully in the next few weeks that will come out. I sat down with Monty McNair. He still is just so focused on making the playoffs. It doesn't seem like it's about the seeding for this team. Certainly, if you ask the fans there in Sacramento, it's just been so long since they've experienced the postseason. I don't think the point is the 3 seed, it's the playoffs. So, as long as they're still able to just not completely fall off the wagon here, they should be fine. I do think it would require their defense to tighten up some, and there really haven't been any firm indications that that's on the way. I mean, I know that they point to the fact that over the last couple months that their defense has been a little better than what it was at the very beginning of the season, but it's still not great. They have some things that they do that they're good at. I think they're the best zone defense in the league statistically. They lit up very, very few fast break points and very few transition opportunities, despite the fact that they play at one of the faster paces in the league. So there are things that they shut down and take away. But generally speaking, they're not great at protecting the rim. Their bench is not particularly effective. So they probably would have to be a little bit better defensively to be at 500 or better than 500, given that they're going to play the second hardest schedule in the West the second half.
Did you think they should have made a move at the trade deadline, or because, as you just laid out, they're kind of playing with house money, it was smart to sit back and see where this thing falls?
I asked Monty about that too, and I was a little bit surprised they did not. It seemed like the backup big position was kind of a spot that maybe they could have improved a little bit. Domantas Sabonis, when you look at the amount of points they give up in the paint per game, kind of would suggest that Sabonis has not been very good defensively, and it's really actually not the case. He's held opponents, I think, 4 or 5 percentage points lower than their average when he's defending the rim. It's really a function of the fact that they let guys into the lane a little bit too easily, guard, and that their backup bigs have not been great at protecting the rim so far. So between that and Mike Brown kind of openly admitting that he's been searching for an answer off the bench at the big position, I thought they would do something. It is house money. I do believe Monty with what he told me, which is that he didn't ever want to part ways with an important piece of the team in order to upgrade one spot and kind of spot clean something. So I do understand that, but we will see. It gets very difficult to win in the playoffs when you don't have much defense, interior defense. But that said, their starting lineup has been really, really good this year. Has played more minutes than any other starting 5 in the league, any other lineup in the league. And if there's one upside of that, it's that your starting lineups are going to play longer in the playoffs. Your stars are going to play longer than your bench guys in the playoffs. So I do understand the concept of not wanting to overdo it just to fix one aspect of your team. And I also understand the idea of maybe wanting to see how your team looks on the first go round in the playoffs before making a big decision that's going to impact your future going forward. So I understand both sides of it, and I think that they're in a pretty good spot regardless.
Last one for you, Chris. And again, thanks for the time. We look at the Warriors. Obviously, they've been banged up. Age is starting to climb on this team. You get the Bob Myers stuff, the contract situation, rumblings of Steve Kerr. Does this feel like this could be the Warriors' last dance, so to speak?
No, I don't think that. I mean, I'd be a little bit surprised. Like, I understand the Bob Myers question, and I think it's fair. Only he can answer that, and the Warriors organization can answer that. But as long as Steph is there, and I think as long as you keep the core there, Clay, Draymond, I think is obviously a big question after this season. But I kind of feel like Draymond, is a very, very valuable player. There's no team that he would have more value to than with Golden State, just given the relationship he has on court, off court with Steph. As long as you have a couple of those core pieces there, and obviously Jordan Poole is locked in as well. No, I don't see it as a last dance situation. I imagine Steve Kerr would probably be back too. Who knows? Bob Myers might be the glue that holds it all together, and if he leaves, maybe it's a completely different scenario. But, I would take my chances with any solid GM, decent GM, being able to figure out a recipe in which if Steph Curry is healthy, this team is a real contender. And so I don't think that aspect of it changes, even if it was Bob Myers. If Steve Kerr were to leave, I think it would be another hit as well. But, I still would trust that Steph plus some of the right pieces gives you a contender.
All right, Chris, man. Thanks again. We appreciate your time. Great stuff. And hopefully we get to do this again soon.
Sounds good, guys. Take care.
You too. There goes Chris Herring from Sports Illustrated. He is NBA senior writer for SI. He was on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. The memorable moment that a stuck NBA charter plane created last night. Then more coming up.
Check out the Golf to Go Hour with Frank LaRosa every week on Sactown. One brings Macloth magic, while the other, we're still trying to figure that out.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Capital Casino is conveniently located on 411 North 16th Street in downtown Sacramento. And Ramie, as we talked about to start the show, we are happy to report that the Portland Trail Blazers are in the air.
Yes.
They are on their way to Sacramento.
I'm just glad we'll have any basketball tonight.
Yes.
The quality of it, secondary.
Yeah.
You know?
If you're just joining us, Dame Dollar will be out. Jeremy Grant will be out. Anthony Simons will be out. Yusuf Nurkic will be out. So lots of Shaden Sharp and company.
The JV squad.
Yes.
Coming to Golden One
So
tonight.
if you're going to the game, hope you enjoy it. Might not be what you thought it was going to be.
Probably see a win.
I said this.
See the beam up close.
Said this to you before the show.
Yes.
Because we talked about load management yesterday.
Yeah.
And neither of us are like that worried about it. But this is ridiculous.
24 hours ago, man. We can't go back on it now.
No, like this specific example is ridiculous.
I mean,
they're coming off of the All-Star break.
They were just sitting on a plane for 17 hours or whatever it was to not go anywhere. By the way, isn't it a chartered flight? Even chartered flights, you have to just sit on the plane while it's stuck on the tarmac?
I think it's outrageous that these guys are coming off the All-Star break and everybody's sitting.
I get it. I understand it. I'm in the same boat I was yesterday. I understand it. I don't need Dame going out there and tearing an ACL because he was stuck with no leg room for 17 hours.
What?
You never know, man.
Seems like a gigantic leap that you just took. He's going to tear his ACL because he sat on a plane.
I don't know. An Achilles?
And by the way, he didn't just sit on the plane. He was doing a lot on that plane. Because as the Blazers were stuck on the plane for 7 hours last night, Dame Dollar figured, hey, why not just pretty much shoot a rap video? Let's do this. And apparently came up with something on the fly, no pun intended. And here was the Dame Dollar rap on the plane that got out there.
Hey, how the we stuck up in the snow? Guess we fly this tomorrow. Bookies know I keep a clip, won't change what I'ma get tomorrow. Bag stuck on the plane, I might have to buy a fit tomorrow. In this cuffing weather, grab your you might get hit tomorrow. You gon' set the pick, I'm pulling up from 40. These bitches cause they act like they don't know me. I'ma tap my wrist, it's game time. I give them fits on with the game to keep it lit. Cap, let me in the pit. Hey, me and T, I thought y'all knew that was my. Had to go and grab my teeth up the 6. Shooters in the locker room like he the wizard. Got me tight, stepped up in his blizzard.
That's pretty good. That was right off the top. That was freestyle. That wasn't even, he didn't write that beforehand. That was freestyle.
How much do you believe in freestyles?
What do you mean? How much do I believe in freestyles?
Here's my theory.
There is a loose definition. I know where you're going. There's a loose definition of what is a freestyle.
Yeah.
Like there is just turning on the beat and let me see what comes out. And that's some people consider that is the only form or fashion of freestyle. Then there's what Dame did there. They said he wrote it. So he wrote it on the spot and then spit it. I still consider that freestyle.
That's fine. I think, I'm not saying this specific instance.
Yes.
I think there are freestyles that you hear that are not freestyles.
This is
these are rhymes that guys have come up with, right?
Yes. And
then they go into these studios for these interviews on these music stations, and they do the 7/8 song medley, right, with the 8 beats. And these guys I'm supposed to believe that for like 2.5 straight minutes, these guys, that's not how this works.
I say the same thing about improv comedy.
Yeah.
Like they have a bunch of stuff in their belt. It's just a matter of which one are they going to pull out. Yeah. You know what I mean? They got a bunch of jokes or a bunch of bars.
100%.
Right? I agree. I'm with you on that. I do agree with you on that.
Like, I just keep hearing all of this stuff. And I was like, that's not, come on. You think that person came out with that off the top of their head for like 1:45? I'm not saying it's impossible. Just saying it's
I have a friend who's I have a friend who's like a semi-professional battle rapper. Like it's partly how he makes a living, which is borderline ridiculous. But And he's amazing. Carter Deems, check him out. And I went down like a wormhole. Once I found out, I didn't know. I just knew he was a comedian. And then somebody told me, they were like, oh yeah, he's a battle rapper.
He's a comedian slash
battle rapper. And
dude's living the life.
I went down a rabbit hole of his battles, and he's not repeating the same material a lot, but there are definitely repeats or spins on something that he's said before. You know what I mean?
Well, Dame was smooth. You know who wasn't smooth?
Who's that?
CNN anchor Zane Asher. Now, she was given the unfortunate responsibility of telling us about the international flavor of the NBA All-Star game. And things did not go well for Zane.
The best basketball players in the NBA will hit the court for the annual All-Star game. It seems international players, though, are taking over. 9 starters in the game are international players. One of the captains, of course, know his name well, the NBA legend LeBron James. On the other side, you've also got Greek-Nigerian superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's on the far right in this picture here. He's not the only All-Star with ties to Africa. The Raptors' Pascal Siakam and also Joel Embiid from the 76ers are both from Cameroon. And Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat.
You got that one.
Is Nigerian.
She got Bam Adebayo right. She got LeBron right.
She was 1 for 5 there?
Pascal Siakam.
Pascal Siakam.
They call him Shaquem the Dream in Toronto. Shaquem the Dream.
What did she call Giannis?
If he was a wrestler, he'd be Shaquem the African Dream.
Giannis Atunko?
Yeah.
Giannis Atunko?
Atunko, I think is what she said.
And I was saying this earlier. I almost gave her a pass with Giannis firstly because I was like, okay, she's got that accent.
Everybody misses Giannis.
Wow. It went places unexplored.
Joel Embiid.
You know what I think? Because JJ before, the consummate producer that he is, when we were talking about this, he was like, this is where a producer,
somebody's going to save her,
needs to save her and go to her beforehand and go, are you sure you know how to pronounce all these names? Let me make sure you know how to pronounce all these names.
Here's the question, though, for her. I agree with that.
Right?
But how much responsibility does she bear to go to the producer and go, this is not necessarily my wheelhouse?
Right. No, that's true. Because
like, if I don't know a name, right? Like Verlad and Simone are in the back right now. If I don't know a name before a show, I will ask everybody that is a part of the show, do we know how to pronounce this person's name? Yes. I looked up Zane Asher's name, frankly, because I was like, how does she pronounce her name, right? So that's what I do, and I think that's what you do. Yes. Apparently, that's not what she does.
No,
she was like, we're going to let this puppy fly.
But you know what I think it is? I think it's the accent.
That's what I said.
Right, Simone? When I hear somebody with a British accent, I assume they're smart.
There's a pass. I don't know.
And they get a pass.
I thought you were saying it's the accent why she messed up the names. I'm like,
No. Dude, for a second, I'm not going to lie. For a second, I was like, is it Pascal Siakam? Like, she sounds like she knows what she's talking about. Are we sure it's not Pascal Siakam? And we've been saying it wrong all this time. That thought definitely crossed my head because of the British accent. I was like, she sounds really smart. She might know something we don't. Maybe it is Pascal Siakam. Maybe it is Giannis Atunko or whatever she said.
You should go to England, Ramie. Because once you go, you realize they're just as dumb as us.
There are different kinds of British accents.
Ramie wants to walk into a British pub and expects philosophers sitting at the bar.
There are different kinds of British accents. She's speaking the Queen's English. Then there's like a Cockney British accent, and I hear that, and I go, man.
No, you hear people with the Queen's English that are like, oh, really?
Yeah, no, I'm sure there are dumb people speaking the Queen's English, for sure, who don't know what they're talking about.
They believe in a queen, for God's sake.
But I'm telling you,
by the way, Mr. All Red Everything says, Nick, you're a fool for that. I don't know what.
For what?
Maybe the air horn? I don't know. The air horn was a hit, though. Ryan in Sactown, the Cattle's. Oh, there it is. The Cattle's air horn is the best thing I've ever heard.
Me and my friends used to sit in the back of the room at comedy open mics, and when one of us would bomb like a joke, and the room was just completely silent, we would all just sit in the back and go bam, 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 to fill out the empty space. just to rub that salt in the wound of your joke's not funny.
Giannis Atunko. My favorite though is Shaquem.
Pascal
Shaquem. Shaquem. And you know he's going to be called that for the rest of his career. From buddies, from play, like everybody's going to call him Shaquem.
Maybe we should double check and make sure it's not Pascal Shaquem.
I'm pretty.
Okay.
That's like Rihanna. That's not how you pronounce her name. It's actually Rihanna.
No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really?
Yeah.
He told me that the other day, and I choose.
It's true.
It's not what Mad Dog said. He said Rihanna. It's not that.
I don't
right?
know. Maybe Mad Dog was right.
No.
But he called Elon Musk Tusk, so that's out the window. That's when you.
And I don't hear Mad Dog's accent and go, oh yeah, that guy knows.
I know lots of people with that accent. I'll tell you. Up next, an incredibly telling and concerning quote from Coach Mike Brown.
The only place you'll find Harrison Barnes is Sactown Sports.
He's got the bucket at the buzzer, Harrison Barnes.
Hey, Sacramento, it's Harrison Barnes, and you're listening to the home of the Sacramento Kings, Sactown Sports.
Your local sports leader.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today? So you've got an oil change coming up. Consider STP Conventional High Mileage to save on motor oil for your everyday vehicle. Right now, you can get 5 quarts with an STP oil filter for only $26.99. Do the complete job for the right price. Get the parts you need when you need them.
Power Business Technology is proud to be 100% independent, locally owned, and managed Toshiba copier dealer. Local ownership cuts out the red tape, allowing ourselves to never be too busy to personally answer the call when our clients need us. Recognized for excellence in service execution, training, and customer service, we're proud to be named a 2022 Toshiba ProMasters Elite Dealer. Contact us today for all of your business printing needs at 844-POWER-BZ. That's 844-769-3729, or visit us at powercopiers.com.
Ray Maliotti here for eBay Motors. You're driving along and some nimrod cuts you off. You hit the horn.
Dame Lillard out for tonight's game against the Kings. Keep it locked right here to Sactown Sports as we unpack all of the Beam Team coverage leading you up to game night right after Cattles and Ramie on Sactown Sports. Those are your Sactown Sports headlines. I'm Simone. Welcome back to Cattles and Ramie.
Your afternoon home for Kings talk and more.
This is Cattles and Ramie
on Sactown Sports.
Second hour of the radio program. Ramie and I getting in our defensive stances.
Yes, sir.
If you're watching on YouTube.
Yes, sir.
We're doing the Deuce Mason.
I might stand the whole show.
Yeah, you told me that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got some tummy issues that that are exasperated by
hopefully
by the sitting down posture.
Hopefully things go well for you.
Not those types of tummy issues.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, the Kings back on the floor tonight, as Simone just told you during her fantastic update. The Portland Trailblazers have finally made it to Sacramento. Unfortunately for Kings fans, or maybe fortunately for Kings fans, if we were looking forward to watching Dame Dalla tonight and Anthony Simons and Jeremy Grant and Yusef Nurkic, if you were looking forward to that, I've got some bad news for you.
Mm-hmm.
None of those individuals are going to play a basketball game tonight.
Not playing hoops tonight.
They're all going to be sitting and watching like you
go
are.
See what their fits might be on the sideline, right?
I'm going to score as many points as Dame Dalla tonight.
It would be cool if Dame spit a freestyle at halftime, would it? Just to give the people something. You know what I mean?
Feels like that would
money
be
to see Dame Dalla.
Be a little disrespectful to the product.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Slightly.
I'd be into it.
Just slightly.
I'd be into it if I was at Golden One tonight.
But let's talk about this bench, Ramie. Yesterday, we had the conversation about the rotation, starting five. We know what the starting five is. I don't think that is going to change anytime soon. Davion, Monk, Lyles seem to be pretty safe. I said yesterday, and I think you agreed, I would not be against necessarily if Davion continues to somewhat struggle offensively, and that's putting it lightly, somewhat struggle. I might be open to the idea of TD coming in, but of course, if you do that, you're taking a step back defensively. But Monk is there, Lyles is there, and then I think you're really looking at Metu / Rashawn Holmes if you want to try to give him life again. I would try at least one more time to give Rashawn Holmes a chance to do something here. So we'll see how this rotation looks. We go back, though, about a week or two ago when we had Coach Mike Brown on the show, and here's what the coach had to say about his rotations.
No, I feel pretty good about the group of 8, 9 players. But having said that, I think we can go, a little bit deeper than, 8, 9 players at times. And that's why it's been good, whenever it seems like we've had an injury or something like that, or even I hadn't called a guy's number in 6 or 7 games, and I just throw them out there. The way that those guys have stepped up and performed has been at an extremely high level.
So that was Brown on our show a week or two ago saying, I think we can go even deeper than 8 or 9 guys. Coach Brown had a fantastic interview with Anthony Slater in The Athletic today. You should check it out if you can. I actually tweeted this article out at Nick C Radio earlier today. And here's what Brown said about the rotation. Quote, you go down the line, and a lot of these guys haven't had a significant role on a playoff team. So for us, the different type of players we have, we got to make sure we are open-minded going into any game, that if this player isn't giving it to us on this particular night, we have to be ready to move on to the next one. Your reaction to that comment, Ramie?
I love that. And that's the mentality that you have to take now. And we've talked throughout the season, and especially early in the season, Nick, when we were somewhat baffled by Mike Brown's rotations and when he would stick with certain guys, when he would go away from certain guys, and we couldn't quite wrap our heads around or put our finger on what exactly his thought process was. And we both theorized, hey, maybe he's trying to figure out who's who and what's what and who he can count on when there are bigger things on the line and when we get down the home stretch and it's crunch time. And this kind of confirms that for me, but Mike Brown is at the point where he's done trying to find out what guys can give him. And it's, can you give me something tonight or not? because we got to win this game. And if it's not you, then I got to go and get somebody else off the bench who can come in and give me what I need to win this game tonight. I love the mentality, and it kind of confirms what I thought Mike Brown was doing earlier in the season when we talked about some of the rotations that baffled us a little bit, Nick.
You know, I'm actually a little concerned by this comment.
Really?
I'm glad that, again, Coach Brown is refreshingly honest, and I don't necessarily disagree with a coach kind of calling his guys out and letting them know where the line is, right? Like, this is the deal. You're either going to produce or you're not, and if you're not, you're going to be taken out, and that's how this world works. The reason, though, why I'm a little bit concerned, and I'm not saying I'm panicking or anything, but post All-Star break, things are still not settled. Like, we're still having this conversation post All-Star break. This is the third seed in the Western Conference. We all want them to make the playoffs. I believe they're going to make the playoffs. But when you talk about a playoff team, when you usually talk about a team who is the third seed in a conference, they have a pretty good handle and idea as to who they can trust, who they can't, and what their rotation is. We're 25 games away from a hopeful postseason series. And the head coach is telling us, hey, man, I got an open mind because who I have on this roster, they might not do the job.
I mean, yeah, I'd rather Mike Brown had a more solid idea of their top 8 or 9 guys.
It's unsettling to me that it's not clear as to what the hierarchy is here outside of Davion. And if you look back, Davion, I think, played less than 10 minutes his last game before the All-Star break. I would not even necessarily say that Davion is a guarantee for 15 minutes. The only guy on this bench that I feel is guaranteed every single night is Malik Monk to get 15 or more minutes.
I agree with you.
Other than that, it's
pretty close to Trey Lyles. I don't know.
Pretty close. Yeah.
I haven't looked at the trend with him in the last 10 or 20
He's had a
games.
few 8 or 9 minute games, but he's been pretty close. You're right.
Pretty close to night in, night out getting those 15. I mean, yeah, naked. I mean, when you consider the reality of what he's saying, yeah, it's unsettling. But I knew that was the reality before I heard those quotes from Mike Brown. I'm glad that with the reality of it being what it is, he's taking the approach that he's taking. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
And he's because some coaches,
that's fair.
Some coaches can be stubborn. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, these are my guys. I'm going to go with these guys. Who else? You know what I mean? And I don't think you're going to get that with Mike Brown. I think this is the approach he should be taking down the stretch on a night-to-night basis of finding the guys who have it on that night and who can contribute and help you win a game.
We tend to focus when we have these conversations on the bench guys and say, oh, this directly affects them, because it does. It directly impacts the bench guys. That's who Coach Brown is talking about. But don't get it twisted. This also puts more pressure on the starting 5, because if you do not have that consistency, if the coach is, questioning whether or not I could play this guy, I might not be able to play this guy tonight. If that's going through his head, there's more pressure on Fox. There's more pressure on Sabonis. There's more pressure on these guys to consistently give you some major, major numbers. And that goes in line, Ramie, with what we talked about at the trading deadline, the lack of depth that is trusted, and how much you ask of especially Domas to give you on a nightly basis as we get closer to the playoffs.
Yeah. And I think a lot of guys, when you look around the league, Nick, a lot of the guys that are the face of their team and are the leaders of their team, you're going to see them play heavy minutes, but they probably weren't playing the minutes that Domas was up until this point in the season. And we often bring up the quality of the minutes, or the brutality of the minutes, I should say, that Domas plays with his physical style and as much as he plays around the rim and the beating that he takes. Domas's minutes are not the same as everybody else's minutes.
Correct.
And other guys have sort of gotten breaks throughout this season that Domas hasn't necessarily gotten. Mike Brown talked early in the season about this approach and the fact that they didn't have the luxury of playing the load management game because the standings are so tight, and he put it this way, this isn't me, for those of you who accuse of being negative, they're not good enough. They're not good enough to have that luxury of load management and sitting guys and potentially losing games earlier in the season, because Mike Brown knew it could come back and bite him now, but it can also come back and bite you when you play a Domas or you play a De'Aaron Fox, the heavy load of minutes that they've played to this point in the season.
This crystallizes, and I'm sure Monty knew this beforehand, but this also publicly crystallizes what this team needs. In the offseason, when you get there, because you did not add at the deadline, you have to find some answers. You have to find 2 to 3 pieces that you can put on this bench that your coaching staff can trust. Because Coach Brown is telling us, I do not trust the guys on the bench. And I agree with you. Again, it's refreshing how he's handling it. He's just putting it out there, and I'm sure he spoke to the players before he said this. But this is a clear shot across the bow to the front office in a way of like, hey, I don't know what I got here. A lot of this is a crapshoot, guys.
Yep.
Like if we can add a couple of pieces that I can put my head on the pillow at night and know that I can trust, that would be a great thing. We want your thoughts on the comments from Coach Brown about this bench, saying, he basically doesn't really know what to expect on a night-to-night basis. And if things aren't working out well, he's got to be ready to move on to the next one. Your thoughts, 916-339-1140. Also, the phone number is 1-800-920-1140. YouTube.com, Sactown Sports 1140 is that YouTube channel. You can check us out. Give us the thumbs up. We would very much appreciate that. Trying to build this community. More likes means more eyeballs. That's why we ask. YouTube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. Get to some of your reaction. Also, we'll dig deep into the Kings' defensive questions in 90 seconds.
The Sacramento Kings return from the All-Star break looking to keep a grip on the 3rd seed in the West when they take on the Blazers at the Golden One Center Thursday night.
Coverage begins with game night at 5:30 on Sactown Sports. Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone, America's #1 brakes destination. We have the pads, rotors, drums, shoes, and brake fluids to improve your stopping power. Right now, save 15% when you get any 2 Duralast rotors with a set of Duralast brake pads. Missing a tool? Ask about our free Loan-A-Tool program and borrow the tools you need to get the job done.
You said you want
Claim based on data from the MPD Group 2021. Deposit required for Loan-A-Tool.
And now a small business setback. Set to smooth jazz.
It's late. You're driving in the rain with only one thing on your mind. The deer about to total your HVAC van. But with Progressive's 30-plus customizable coverage options, you're covered. The rest is just saxophone.
When running your small business gets rough, Progressive Commercial is there to smooth it out. Get a quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com.
Twinkly sound.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Coverage and discounts not available for all vehicles or states. Policy terms and conditions apply. With you 1 mile at a time during the afternoon drive. Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
It is 3:14 on this Thursday. Time check brought to you by Cosi Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. A couple of people weighing in on YouTube about the game tonight. Since if you're just joining us, the Blazers are in town. The plane has landed. They're here in Sacramento. But Dame is not going to play. Nurkic is not going to play. Grant is not going to play. Simons is not going to play. And a couple of reactions to this. In the YouTube channel, youtube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. Nick K, if the Kings lose tonight, they should just tank the rest of the season. They want Benyama sweepstakes. Let them begin. Patrick Donaldson, I don't want to jinx it. Games like this scare me. I remember the Warriors were healthy and played a Suns team without their starters and were at home and still lost.
Didn't the Kings have a game earlier this season where a bunch of starters were out and they either, for the opposing team, and they either lost or almost lost?
Sounds familiar.
I don't remember who it was. I know there was a game like that earlier this season. New Orleans? I want to say it was New Orleans. And their best 3 or 4 players were out, and the Kings lost to them. Am I misremembering?
I don't know.
Okay.
I do remember a game where there were a couple of guys missing. What was it? It was recently.
Yeah.
Somebody help us out here.
I think it was the Pelicans.
New Orleans, it was. Ryan in Sactown says New Orleans. Yeah, that was when there was no Ingram. There was
Zion.
There was no Zion. They did have McCollum. They didn't have Valanciunas.
Yes.
Those were the 3 guys that were out.
3 of their top 4.
And it was really bad.
It was bad.
As Ryan,
and I think they were on the second of a back-to-back.
Ryan reminds us, 32 points lost. It was a second night of a back-to-back. Here's something I wanted to ask you.
In my memory.
TCG says that I expect too much of this team.
In what way? I don't think you expect too much of this team.
Yeah, I said I predicted 37 wins before the year. I upped that to 45 at the halfway point, smack dab at 41 games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're a playoff team.
I think that's pretty much. I don't think you're asking for too much there.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Based on what we've seen from this team.
I don't think that is outrageous. Another thing before we get to some of this defense that we want to get into. Mark Rodriguez, again, youtube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. Very easy way to talk to the guys here behind the scenes and in front of the microphone. Sactown Sports 6A to 6P, live and local. People forget that Coach Brown is still relatively young and growing along with this team. He's not Phil Jackson. Mark, I respectfully disagree with you. He's been in the NBA as a coach for about 30 years.
He was, I think, the youngest head coach in the league when he got the Cleveland job first time around. So he's younger than probably a lot of guys are at this stage in their career and fourth job, right? I don't know that for a fact. I would imagine, though.
He coached LeBron in Cleveland. He coached Kobe in LA. I mean, he's a seasoned coach.
Yes, he has the experience and the seasoning, as you said. But age-wise, he might be kind of.
Well, yeah.
He might be on the younger.
But
end of the
I'm
scale.
looking at basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how old he is. I'm sure a Google search. I'm gonna guess 52. Hopefully he's not angry at me. Oh my, 52.
Nailed it, huh?
Look at that. Hey, you know what? Sun shines on a dog's tuchus every once in a while. Let's talk about this team's defense, Ramie. We know the issues, right? We know the issues defensively. We've seen them play out. When Brown was brought in, it was with the idea of, hey, he's going to improve the defense. And we asked him about this on the show going back a week or two ago, defensively, what the issue was and how he felt. Here's what Coach Brown had to say then.
Yeah, a lot of it is we're just not quite ready. You always want to be ready or be better sooner than later. But this thing takes a process, and I have to keep coaching them hard. I have to keep helping them grow, and they have to also keep embracing it the way that they are. But you have to be able to do this over an extended amount of time, or you have to have a few guys on your team that are high-level defenders and that have done it over time.
All right, so Coach Brown's message was pretty much, we got to learn. These guys got to learn. It's going to take time, patience. I looked at the defensive statistics today, Ramie, before the show. I compared last year to this year because, again, when Brown was brought in, and we said this as well, defensive-minded coach.
We thought that's what he was brought here to do.
Yes, and here's the not so good when you compare last year to this year, okay? Last year, defensive rating 24th. This year, 22nd so far. So really not much movement.
No, it's an uptick.
Paint points, 27th last year, 28th this year. Slight step back, right? And then you look at the shooting percentages from the opposition. Team opponent field goal percentage last year, 28th. This year, 29th. Team opponent three-point percentage last year, 22nd. This year, 29th. So when you look at defensive rating, paint points, opponent field goal percentage, opponent three-point percentage, this defense this year has actually been worse than the defense last year in multiple categories outside of the defensive rating, which they're 2 spots better. And don't forget that, the schedule, as Coach Brown said to Anthony Slater in The Athletic, has been favorable up to this point. Now, here's the better, because they have improved in a couple of spots. Fast break points. And when we talk about improved, we talk about significant improvement. Fast break points. Last year, the Kings defense, they gave up they gave 23rd in the league. So what, the 7th most fast break points? This year, they're actually 2nd in the league.
Oh.
And when you look at second chance points, 27th last year versus 7th this year. So there has been some improvement in certain categories, but overall, big picture, you're witnessing a lot of what you witnessed last year. Then there is this Deuce tweet from Deuce and Mo, our friend Deuce Mason in the midday. Check him out, 11 to 2 here on Sactown Sports. Deuce tweeted out today, we're a defensive stat for the Kings. First half of games, they are 25th in defensive rating. Second half of games, they are 13th in defensive rating. In the fourth quarter, Ramie, this is a top 10 defense in defensive rating. What do you make of that?
I have a theory.
Oh, I like theories.
We've talked about, and we will talk more about, Mike Brown's interview in The Athletic, and in there they touch on the pace. Well, hand in hand, the pace that the Kings play with, along with the lack of defense that they play, Nick. And Mike Brown admits that there is sacrifice that, or I guess, I don't know if sacrifice is the right word, compromises Mike Brown has had to make when you talk about his basketball philosophies and teams that he's coached in the past and what they've looked like. And he flat out says it is challenging, but at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in our job as coaches, being able to figure out what your team's strengths are and then playing to your strength. Mike Brown knows this isn't a good defensive team. And Mike Brown knows that he can coach them as much as he wants. He can drill them as much as he wants. Guys are kind of who they are by the time they get to the NBA. And you don't often make great defensive players out of mediocre or worse defensive players once they've gotten to this level. So I think Mike Brown, in a sense, is saying, let's just run for 3 quarters, and there's only a certain amount of gas in the tank. If you're going to run for 3 quarters, Nick, how much energy do you have left for the defensive side of the floor? You know what I mean? So go ahead and run and try and outscore teams for the first 3 quarters. Then we got to buckle down in the fourth quarter and play some defense. But I really think it is a question of how much effort can you put into the defensive side of things when you're running up and down the court at the pace and putting up as many shots and getting as many possessions as they are under the system that they're currently running right now.
My takeaway is, focus, the precision of this team defensively, and also margin of error, which we've talked about before, right? And if they are fully in tune, they can play passable defense. But if they slip in any way, the thing craters. And Brown talked about that with Anthony Slater again in this interview. He said, we're not a big team, which we've talked about, Ramie. If you're 6'7", 6'8" across the board like Toronto and you're flying at guys, that's impactful. We don't have 4 or 5 guys on the floor that are that size. We have to be fundamentally sound in every single defensive possession, which is tough. That's talking about the precise, the precision nature of this defense and what they're trying to accomplish. And Brown also talked about the pick and roll defense. He says, if your backside on the pick and roll is 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", instead of 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", you have to be better. The chain reaction, ball pressure has to be on point, getting over the screens. Our bigs have to be up to touch so these guys aren't getting ahead of steam downhill because we don't have a 7-footer at the rim blocking shots. These are many things I've brought up and you've talked about, weaknesses of this team when we look at it. Coach Brown is saying, yes, that's what's going on here. He says that means the protection from the vertical threat rolling has to be on point. Our rotations have to be on point. So they have to be, because of the way this roster has been constructed, and this is the coach telling you, not me, they have to be near perfect to be a good to really good defensive team. And so I think that's the reality of this situation. The coach is telling us we don't have the size.
Right.
We don't have to have the athleticism. So you see these massive peaks and valleys, ebbs and flows defensively. That's because they have to be almost perfect. And when they play almost perfect defense, when they do everything that Coach Brown just mentioned in this interview, they can play pretty decent defense. It's just they don't have the studs, so to speak, to really be consistently stopping the ball and stopping offenses.
And if you thought you could get more stops, you might slow things down and muck it up a little bit more. Instead, I think the Kings decide, let's try and play as fast as we can and see if we can just tire teams out and then play. It's almost a rope-a-dope type of thing. You know what I mean? Like we'll have, defensively speaking, we'll have our best punches stored up when you're good and tired after 11 rounds of trying to beat us up.
It's all interesting stuff to me. Find it fascinating. 916-339-1140 is the text line. The phone line is wide open for you. 1-800-920-1140. Don't forget youtube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. Give us a thumbs up. We'll have Frankie Cartoscelli joining us for about a solid half hour, starting at 4 o'clock right at the top. Can't wait for that to happen. So we still have a lot of Kings to talk about. But coming up next, after his pre-All-Star break performance, is it fair to expect more from De'Aaron Fox? We'll get into it.
Cattles and Ramie. Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Cattles and Ramie. Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
The team at M&S
Just keep you on edge.
Cattles.
And Ramie.
On Sactown Sports.
I feel like you told me you're going to stand for the entire show, so I would stand, and now you're sitting.
I am sitting now.
Last 2 segments.
Yeah, it's not comfortable. I should probably stand.
I mean, nobody's holding you down.
But then my feet get tired. So I'm a mess. Just left. All right, fine. I'll stand. I'll stand. You can't sit over there. What are you sitting over? That doesn't do anybody any good. Sitting in the stadium seats in the corner of the studio. That does nobody any good
Can't
whatsoever.
see him, can't hear him.
Nothing. What, you can't just walk off the show.
Well, yeah, technically he could.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess.
I mean, I just did.
I guess, yeah.
Anyway, we got a question here from
All right, I'll
Alex
stand.
Levko. Because I talked about the defense, and part of the defense was turnovers. And if you look at the defensive statistics, fast break points, actually, it's a much, much better statistic this year than it was last year for the Kings. So Alex asked on YouTube, youtube.com, Sactown Sports 1140, where are they on turnovers? Turnovers equals fast break points. Interestingly enough, Ramie, I looked this up during the break because of Alex's question. So last year, the Kings averaged 14.1 turnovers per game. This year, they're averaging 14 turnovers per game.
That's a slight improvement.
Like the same exact.
Slight improvement, Nick.
So how in the world is it that their fast break points averages and percentages and stuff like that are so much better this year? I could only think of 3 possibilities. And as I responded to Alex in the YouTube chat, better at getting back, right? Getting back quicker, making sure you're back on defense.
Sure.
Less live ball turnovers. See, so you could have the same number of turnovers, but how many, we talked about that a little bit yesterday, how many are live ball versus dead ball turnovers? Live ball turnovers is what kills you in the fast break game. And also just better transition defense when it comes to floor balance. That's what that would be my 3 guesses as to why those numbers are a little quirky. Meanwhile, De'Aaron Fox, 25-4-6 pre-All-Star break, consistently getting better and improving defensively, which was nice to see. The clutch numbers are just outrageous, as we know. Fox leads the NBA with 148 total clutch points. He's shooting a league-high 58.8% from the field in clutch time, Ramie. That's according to Tom Dierberger from NBC Sports Bay Area. And a nice little story he wrote today for the top 5 storylines for this team. Post-All-Star break history will tell you that Fox has been a better player post-All-Star game than pre-All-Star game.
Yep.
And here was Fox at shoot-around talking about what he needs to get done here the next 25 games.
Just continue to be aggressive. Obviously, we always talk about it's a make-or-miss league, but I think if the level of aggression is the same, then you still be able to get to the free throw line, see the ball go through the hoop, and just get a rhythm going.
Ramie, is it fair to expect more from Fox? Because, when you look at how good he was pre-All-Star break, is it fair to expect him to be better over the next 25 games?
He has been, as you pointed out.
Yes.
Got this tweet in front of me and this is a couple of weeks old, from Professor Oak, but still holds true. In his first 3 seasons, or in the last 3 seasons, he had an uptick of almost 5 points and about 5 percentage points and percent and total shooting percentage. A couple of years ago, about an 8-point jump in points per game, pre-All-Star break to post-All-Star break last year. That also had something to do with the Domas trade and Halliburton being shipped out. His true shooting percentage was about 4 or 5% higher, 5%. So he has a track record of being better post-All-Star break. But I was reading a piece at Yahoo yesterday about De'Aaron Fox and him being in a really good place emotionally and mentally and happy playing for the Kings, happier than he's been in a long time. And that's a good sign. Happy employees are productive employees. And I'm about to throw a lot of numbers at you. So I forgive me ahead of time.
Let me prepare. Hold
try
on.
to stick with it, though.
Okay.
Last year, De'Aaron Fox was 175th above replacement players. He was 175th in the NBA last year. He was 194th in win shares. He was 125th in box plus minus. He was 79th in offensive box plus minus. You go to this year, he's 42nd in value over replacement. He's 37th in win shares. He's 54th in box plus minus. Like, he has made, and I know people don't even know what some of these numbers are or what they mean. Point is, he's made huge leaps from the player that he was last year to this year. I don't know if he hasn't peaked, Nick, or if it is fair to expect a big jump pre-All-Star break to post-All-Star break, given the jump that he's made from last year to this year. And honestly, I'd be okay with it, because I think it is a little bit unfair to expect him to be a ton better than he already has been pre-All-Star break and up until this point of the season.
I mean, I expect Fox to be Fox, which means he's going to be better post-All-Star break than pre-All-Star break. That's what his history tells us. I would agree with you, though, Ramie. Like, when you look at some of these numbers, obviously the improvement is not going to be as significant than it has been in prior years, just because he was better in the first half pre-All-Star break than he has been over the past number of years. I also say to myself, he should be fully over the injury issues. Let's not forget that some of those numbers were affected for 2 or 3 weeks when Foxy was dealing with some injury stuff and he wasn't playing as well. And I would also anticipate that Fox would be more comfortable within this system, within this team, with the coaching staff, his teammates, all of those things for the final 25 games. Here is the one thing that they need, though, from Fox. When we talk about improvement, and I mean significant improvement, Fox needs to be better at shooting the ball from distance. He got off to a great start. But, Ramie, since the 1st of December, De'Aaron Fox is shooting 28.6% from three-point land. That's atrocious. We were talking about him in the offseason, and we said, hey, look, if you could get Fox to 36% from three, I mean, perfect world. If you could get him to 37% from three, he's unstoppable offensively.
Not even at 30.
That would make him unstoppable offensively. With his ability to get downhill, with his ability from the mid-range, his ability to finish at the basket, if he could knock down that three consistently, he would be brutal for any opposing defense. He already is tough, right? That's why he's an all-star.
Mm-hmm.
But he would be even better. And since December 1st, under 29% from three, he's got to be better.
He heated up a little bit in the last couple of games before the All-Star break, didn't he?
I
remember correctly.
I think he was 4 of 7 the last one before the All-Star break, if I do remember correctly. I'll look that up. But I mean, they need him to be better, and it's not because his volume of shooting has gone down. Not necessarily. He was 4 of 7 against the Suns. So yes, he was 4 of 7 from three last game before the All-Star break. And that goes to our conversation this morning with JJ when he asked me how weird my memory is. Well, there you have it. For some reason, I remember 4 of 7 from three from Fox against the Suns. So, if you look at it, that's my hope.
That is one area where you could see a major improvement is his 3-point shooting.
Just if he gets better from three, all of his numbers are going to go up.
True.
That one improvement, the next 25 games, if he can give you now 35% from three, that one improvement is going to make him a much better offensive player. And as I said, he's already really good.
I hope he can be much better. He's already made such a huge leap from last year to this year. I don't know how realistic it is to expect that. He's been really damn good this year, man.
He has been. 916-339-1140 is the text line. The phone number is 1-800-920-1140. Don't forget to hit us up. Also want to remind you that Capital Casino is conveniently located on 411 North 16th Street in downtown Sacramento. Next, an all-time best NFL quarterback locks himself into a Hobbit-like structure.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
All right, so sometimes, Ramie, you might wonder, and I don't know if you do or not. I do sometimes wonder what's going on with Simone and JJ behind the glass, like what's going through JJ's head at times during a show.
I've been curious before, yeah.
Well, today JJ tweeted.
Oh,
this was about 30 minutes ago, I think. I'm gonna give you a guess. Just guess and we're gonna get to Aaron Rodgers' retreat in a Hobbit-like structure in a minute. But if I could give you one guess as to the topic of which JJ tweeted about, what would your guess be?
I happen to know that JJ has tickets to go to see the game tonight.
Okay.
Kings and Blazers. I'm gonna guess then, that being the case, it was Jay tweeting his displeasure with the team that the Blazers are going to throw out there tonight.
JJ tweeted less than 30 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know food is good when you eat it cold.
And it's still good. And it's still good. I know exactly what was it, Jay? What were you?
It was so real. I got a super quick story. Me and Nick have talked about this a couple times. I'm not sure, but we're on a workout hype, right? Like I got to get myself in shape. Nick, have you been getting it in, brother?
No.
Not, oh.
the back has not been supportive. I've tried a couple of times.
Because Nick has said since he doesn't have the PD obligations, he's gonna work out a little more, right?
Yeah.
So I gotta drop 20 pounds, man. Like that's my big hype. So I've been on the meal prep situation.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yep.
So with that being said, I'm limiting things that I've been eating. Last night, the wifey, she'd been meal prepping for the kid, and there was some fish, some salmon.
Ooh, that's
and
I
was just gonna say you had salmon last night,
Oh,
Ramie.
there you go. And
Yes,
she
sir.
made some type of wild sriracha hot sauce type thing.
Ooh.
And so as I walked in the kitchen, because I just had to go grab my daughter, I grabbed it and I was like, oh, let me just grab something real quick. And I was like, man, it's cold, but it sure is good. And I with all of that.
I mean,
That's my quick story.
It's got to be good if you go to Twitter and you say it's good.
Yes.
I didn't, but you know what, Jay? With leftover seafood, I think it's always better cold. You heat it up and it gets that funk to it.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you put it in the microwave.
Yeah.
So I think salmon is.
Well, it was in the
cold.
refrigerator. And
Yeah.
so, I'm like, let me grab something real quick. I grabbed a banana and something to drink, but I saw that in the Tupperware.
Yeah.
You know what? This is extras. No longer it's extras. It's no longer extras.
Good.
Fair enough.
I'm glad you enjoyed.
Before we get back to the Kings, which we will at 4:00, Frankie Cartoscelli will join us for about a half hour, commercial free. About a half hour with Frankie coming up at 4:00 to talk all things Kings. Let's slide in a little Aaron Rodgers because we must. So Rodgers, Ramie, is out of the darkness, my friend. He is out of the darkness. He's done with his retreat. This was from ESPN. Rodgers, 39, completed his darkness retreat at Sky Cave on Wednesday. This was according to Scott Berman, who owns the facility, on hundreds of acres of forested land in southern Oregon.
Are you as curious as I am to see what Scott Berman looks like? I'm picturing very crunchy hippie, right?
You think so?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
I'm that's what I'm thinking. Dreads, hemp necklace, moccasins,
Nike moccasin,
cut off shorts.
Maybe he wears a suit. He's a businessman.
Nah, crunchy hippie for sure. It's a family of crunchy hippies running this thing.
Berman said the room in which Rodgers spent his time in is partially underground, Hobbit-like structure with 300 square feet of space, devoid of light, with a queen-sized bed, a bathroom, and a meditation-like mat on the floor. Now,
I lived in a place like this.
I was going to say, when I first moved to Sacramento, I lived in a hotel room that was about 250 square feet with my wife and dog, okay, for like 3 months.
Yeah, that sounded really familiar when he was describing it.
Now, it is fully powered. Like, don't think he's sitting there rubbing sticks together. Fully powered. At any point, the lights can be turned on from inside the room. The retreat has 3 dark rooms. It's booked for the next 18 months. This dude, Berman, big business. With a wait list in the hundreds. 7 more rooms are planned to help accommodate the demand.
You think this is because of Aaron Rodgers? You think he piqued people's interest in darkness retreats?
Maybe. I don't think he ever like officially told people
where
it was going.
Yeah, but sleuths figured it out,
You knew that the owner of this facility would quickly, once Rodgers was out, he's like, I am leaving.
Hey, right, I'm the one. This is where Aaron Rodgers stayed.
Yep. If you're looking for a darkness retreat thing, I got the place for you.
Actually, he probably said it more like, hey, man, I'm the one. This is where Aaron Rodgers stayed, bro.
Come on, bro. Man. Aaron Rodgers came to stay with me, bro.
JJ's is fantastic because JJ has that slight Southern twang. So he's like a Southern twang hippie from Oregon.
It's just a Hobbit-like structure, dude. Nothing to be freaked out about.
Hobbit-like structure.
Just a little dark, dude.
Devoid of light. That's my favorite part.
But to out and out judge it, like you have any understanding of it, that's not exactly a way to come together as a society and connect better as a people, is it? Come on, man.
Is Rodgers
come together as one
on a level of just like insufferable? Where is he at? Is he LeBron insufferable?
Yeah, a lot about him is insufferable. I can't say it's not. I got no problem with the darkness. I would try it.
You're good with the Hobbit-like structure.
I would try it for a day.
Like I was looking at this. I'm like, there's people that are doing it. You could see it on HGTV. They build these little homes all the time. Like this is not. They live in the woods. They build these little homes. I'm telling you. The small houses. They're like 40 grand.
It's
actually
houses?
really smart. Dude,
Yeah.
If I hated people, if I wanted to get away from everyone, it's like 30 grand to build a little house. Like if you were just
I know.
If you were solo, alone, had like, just wanted to be, I'm going to keep to myself. I'll visit my family every once in a while. $30,000. Your house is done and paid for.
You can usually pull it behind a car or a truck. I thought about becoming a road comic with the tiny house.
Would you do stand-up acts at random spots? You just pull up and just
pull up,
bring out a mic and a little
on
PA?
every episode. There's some.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, this ride in was kind of crazy.
On every episode, there's some like architectural innovation that includes their hobby or their profession. I could have like a stage put on the back of it.
I like that,
like a pop-out stage.
I mean,
on the back of my
let's be
tiny
honest.
house.
You could be a talk show host. Just need remote equipment, a little table.
That'd be great if a little set popped out, like just a
StreamYard.
All the furniture is like glued, so like the back just goes plop,
just
and
opens
it's just
up,
there.
and there's a whole talk show set on the back of my tiny house.
You have the little stool. You got the microphone stand.
I might actually
Plop.
do this. We have a theme to the whole thing. We have a gimmick.
How funny would that be? You just roll up to bars and places, and you would just park in the parking lot, and you would just drop it out. And you just do a set right there. People would be parking, and you wouldn't like. You could go to like just random restaurants and random places.
Yeah, I think I might do this. I think I quit, guys.
Better tell Emily. You better text Emily.
Yeah, she might
quick.
She might not be down with that.
Honey, I got this great idea. Really? You might want to rephrase that.
I'm quitting my steady job.
Is it really great? It's fantastic.
I want to hit the road in a tiny house and host a talk show from it. What do you think?
You can be with me. You can be my warm-up act. I mean, it's great.
Let's go. Probably not. I'd try the darkness retreat. When it comes to all this stuff of exploring.
Are you claustrophobic? Are you good in small spots?
Yeah, I'm not really too claustrophobic.
It was an elevator, Nick.
I have said before, like me alone with my thoughts in the dark, it does like
that's no good for me.
I get itchy, I get antsy.
But you can turn the light on.
You can turn the light on if you want, but I think it'd be good to explore that.
Do they check you before you go in the room?
What do you mean?
Because it's quite possible Aaron Rodgers brought like a phone, a computer,
I don't know,
a tablet. Rodgers is like, I'm going to go on a silence retreat. And he was really there watching Netflix for like 3 days.
I wouldn't mind exploring my discomfort with darkness and my own and silence and my own thoughts.
You know what?
Maybe I can break through that barrier and be a better man for it.
You can do that on your own time.
Stop pretending.
I want you to report back to me and let me know how that went for you. I'm quite good with my TV and my lights and humans around me. I'm pretty good with that.
The humans.
The humans.
Remember all that driving stuff we were talking about yesterday?
You are not a fan of humans. You are not. That's one of the things that I have learned about you. Not a fan of humans.
Not all the time.
Not a fan of humans and not staying out beyond 2 hours.
I will stay out more than 2 hours.
I don't know.
Let's make plans.
You always say
Let's
this.
do it.
They always fall apart.
Come on.
You know what I was thinking?
The whole
before
crew.
we bring out
Let's
Frankie
get together.
This is what I was thinking.
Bring Frankie C too.
I was thinking about holding a little get together at my house. Like,
Okay.
and really do it up this time, and not during like 100-degree weather.
I was thinking about
like once we get to like probably early April, because I'm gonna be traveling a lot in March. Sometime in like April, have everybody over. Not if you're listening and work it's invite only. If you work in this building, don't think I'm gonna invite all of you. Okay.
Stop talking to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking about doing the same on the rooftop in my apartment because you can like reserve it out for private functions. So once the weather,
you said this a couple. That'd be good.
Once the weather gets better, it's cold up there right now, man. The wind whips up there.
I would love everybody to actually have to drive to see me versus me having to drive to see everybody else. It's the nightmare I keep living. Frankie C joins us to talk all things Kings coming up next.
Cattles
and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
All right, we are scheduled to be joined by the one and only Frankie C, as Simone just told you. Frankie C is going to be in studio moving forward here, I believe on Thursdays. But, of course, today is a little bit different because the Kings are playing a game on Thursday night. They don't play a lot of games on Thursday night, but they are playing tonight at Golden One. If you haven't heard as of yet, Dame Dalla out, Jeremy Grant out, Yusuf Nurkic out, Anthony Simons out. So
basically the Blazers.
Yeah.
Out.
Well, Shade Sharply out there.
Right.
So if you're into that, that's going to be happening. All right, let's get to Frankie C now, who waits patiently on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Frankie, thanks for making the time, man. I know you're out at the G1C right now on this Thursday. 25 games left. The road really couldn't be much tougher for the Kings. Just kind of your thoughts on how this all lays out over the next 25 for them.
Fellas, thank you for having me on. It's I will sum it up by saying it's exciting. I mean, this is what we all wanted to see. I think that if you would have told me coming into the break, the Kings would be 7 games over and a third spot in the West, I think we'd take that 10 times out of 10. But of course, with that, there are some caveats. And as healthy as the Kings have been this season, and as well as things have gone, of course, the road to the finish line couldn't be much more difficult. So we're going to find out exactly how good this team really is. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing, is how good this team is down the stretch. They have some tough opponents coming up, more road games than home games to finish out the season, which means games like tonight, especially the team that's missing a lot of firepower, the Kings need to protect home court, starting with this evening. So we're going to see how real this team is. I think there's been some people I saw on Twitter. It's kind of funny seeing people say, who are the pretenders in the NBA? And there's a picture of the Kings when the Kings weren't really even supposed to be here in the first place. Well, we're going to see how real they really are. But I'm excited to say the least.
What would you be okay with in these last 25, Frankie? We were talking about it earlier, and I said, give me above 500. Give me 13 wins, and I'll be okay with that, regardless of where that leaves them in the playoff picture. Let the chips fall where they may. Get me 13 wins, and I'm going to be happy.
Yeah, I think that's the easy one. The easy one is to say, just like you said, above 500. That's something I think I agree with. I think being on the little greedy side of things and to really cushion the Kings standing, I'd say 14, 15 wins would be ideal to really ensure you get a top 6 seed there. But you don't really know how the NBA is going to unfold, and especially the Western Conference. And a lot of these teams in the West are going to have to play each other, and those teams are going to kind of cancel each other out. And it's going to be kind of hard for some of those teams to really pick up ground. So if the Kings can maintain the pace they're at and play 500 basketball, they're going to be where they want to be. And we don't know how easy that's going to be. I mean, the Kings have shown they can respond when they lose a game or two in a row. They've done so every time they've fallen in a hole this season. But with that applied pressure of late game situations and a lot of games that some players in the team have not been experienced. They've experienced those kind of games outside of Harrison Barnes and Matthew Dellavedova, a couple other guys on the team. But it's going to be a learning curve for some of these guys. And we're going to see if they're up for the challenge. But yeah, I think 13 wins is an easy, that's like the line right there. That's all you can ask for. But I think 13, 14 wins, that gets them top 6 for sure.
Frankie Cartoscelli with us, of course. He's from Sactown Sports, SactownSports.com. You just mentioned this, Frankie, the idea, and I know Coach Brown talked about this with Anthony Slater in The Athletic in the story that was released today, that interview. The idea of this team being hunted for the first time. How do you anticipate the guys are going to react to that?
I think they'll be up to the challenge. I mean, there's a lot of guys on the team that are very competitive. You have the Malik Monks, De'Aaron Fox, somebody who I think people remember how he was in college. He was a killer out there on the floor for Kentucky alongside Monk on those teams. Demonis Sabonis, somebody who's been there before and somebody who's fiery on the floor. The Kings, I think, are up to the challenge. They like the idea of teams are coming for them, and it's going to come down to, can they back it up? I think they can. It just comes down to games like tonight. To me, I'm really looking to see how they can respond to Portland, who is coming off of a 24-hour ordeal where they've been getting snowed in. There's a blizzard going on in Oregon. They're missing 4 starters. I mean, we've seen the Kings lose games like these a ton of times, and if you want teams out there that are gunning for you and that are coming for you and that are hunting you, you need to win games like tonight. And the Kings have fallen short in more than 1, more than 2, more than 3 occasions this season. They've fallen to teams that are shorthanded, and that just cannot happen if you're a top 6, let alone a top 3 team in the West. So it comes down to how you perform on the floor, and the standings are nice. They're fun to look at, but, it's not going to be – things aren't going to stay exactly the same, I'd imagine. The Phoenix Suns are coming. The Los Angeles Clippers have added a lot of firepower the Kings need to focus on what they can control, and it starts with tonight against Portland.
We've heard and seen Mike Brown say a few times now that he likes this roster, and he's happy to go to battle with these guys as is. How much do you believe that, Frankie, and how much do you think there is some lobbying going on behind the scenes to get him some help before the buyout deadline on March 1st?
It seemed like there was some lobbying before the deadline. I mean, when you see what the revolving door looked like with the backup centers, and I think you guys talked about earlier in the show today about Rashawn Holmes, and if he deserved another shot, I think he does. But, I mean, they have what they have right now. And I think that future tense, sure. I mean, maybe that's lobbying for in the offseason the Kings to make some moves. I think that's something that, in my opinion, has to be addressed this offseason. They need to be more impactful defensively inside. They need more length. They need more wings. And they really are just kind of have to get through to the finish line with Trey Lyles. You have Rashawn Holmes, Chimezie Metu, your other starting forwards, and Keegan Murray, Harrison Barnes. I mean, the Kings have some bodies, but, I mean, knock on wood, if anyone goes down, it really is going to test the Kings' depth and test them in a bad way at a bad time. So there are some changes the Kings need to make, but right now, barring a move on the buyout market, and we don't really know who else will be out there or who is going to be out there very soon. I mean, I think there's only about a week left until March 1st when the buyout market deadline passes. So are there going to be some names out there? It's hard to say. There have been already, and of course they've gone to larger markets like Miami and Los Angeles. So the Kings have what they have, and they might have to dig a little deeper into that rotation. I think Mike said he'd go past that 8-9 players they have right now and kind of scrape whatever else they have left at the bottom there. But the roster is what it is right now. They stood pat the deadline, and I think they do believe in what they have. They do have a good roster. They do have a good 8-9 in the rotation, but the depth could be challenged here late in the season if there's anyone that has to go down for an injury. So it is what it is. They didn't make any moves, and they're going to have to roll into this final stretch with the roster that Monte McNair constructed last summer.
Frankie Cartoscelli is with us here on the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Frankie, I want to talk about one person specifically when we talk depth, and that's Davion Mitchell. When you look at him this year, he's averaging about 18 minutes a game. But pre-All-Star break, the last 4 games, he played 12 minutes, 12 minutes, 12 minutes, 10 minutes. It seems to me like Coach Brown is starting to tighten the leash a little bit with Davion's minutes. Could you see him losing minutes, even more minutes to maybe TD? I know it hurts defensively, but with him being such a zero offensively this year, is Davion in danger of losing even more minutes?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we're seeing it already. I mean, this is the least amount of minutes we've seen Davion Mitchell play as a professional, and it does come down to how impactful he is on the offensive end. It's just not really there right now. And he's had spurts this season where he's been a knockdown guy on the perimeter. I think for a stretch there in December, he was shooting around 35-36% from three for a span of games, and that's just completely fallen off, and the aggression just isn't there. He looks like a different player from when you see him as a starting point guard, and I think I've said the numbers here before. He's around 16 points a game, 6 assists. Of course, last year he was playing almost 40 minutes a night because the Kings had no De'Aaron Fox, but you see what he is when he gets those minutes, but it also is a part of you have to factor in that it's just a different team. And last year's team was not a good team, and Davion had a lot more opportunities to take initiative and to take control on offense. That's not really the case this season. It's something that I pointed out to people when I was talking about the All-Star game with Keegan, Fox, and Sabonis not having those big games and those showcases. The Kings are team-oriented basketball. There's not too much one-on-one basketball, and if Davion's not knocking down from the perimeter or able to beat people off the dribble, I mean, which isn't what the team is asking him to do right now, but then there's not really any use for him on offense. But I think a plug-and-play situation and playing him in situations on defense, like if Damian Lillard would have played tonight, I could have seen a scenario where he played 10, 12 minutes, primarily just to try to slow Dame down. But I think Malik Monk is somebody who has shown he can be the primary ball handler in that second unit. He's somebody that has been very impressive, in my opinion, in making plays and setting up his teammates. And, of course, Fox right now, you don't want this to continue throughout the rest of the season, but he's playing 37, 38 minutes a night over the games leading into the break. So he's losing minutes. It's tough to see how he can kind of dig himself out of that hole this late in the year. And in my opinion, it just comes down to, does Davion fit? And I think he's somebody that would be better off in a situation where he can start. I think he's somebody who thinks he can start, and he clearly isn't really comfortable in a backup role. So that's a matter to tend to in the offseason for Monte McNair, but it comes down to who's going to be more impactful in that backup role. Right now, I think Malik Monk is inching ahead in the backup point guard role. So It'll be interesting to see how the last 25 games unfold, but at least you have somebody off the bench in Davion who can be an on-ball defender, and if you need someone to slow down opposing guards, because there are so many in the NBA, but on the offensive end, you're just not getting much from him right now.
Yeah, don't you think there's a short leash, not just on Davion, but almost everybody coming off that bench, Frankie, because Mike Brown, I think he's going to go based on, like you were alluding to, need. If you got to stop a Dame Lillard, you throw Davion Mitchell out there, and also just who's hot and who's giving him what he needs on a given night. I can't imagine anybody will have a long leash or cushion to sort of figure things out when they need every win that they can get down the stretch here in these last 25.
Yeah, every game is the biggest game of the year from this point on, which is kind of fun and scary. And absolutely. I mean, I think everybody's up for, I mean, outside of the big guys, obviously, but I mean, the Trey Lyles, Chemezi Metus, Terrence Davises, Davion Mitchells, those guys off the bench, I think that all the short leash, and I think Mike Brown might have to try some new things. I mean, he already did with Terrence Davis, who's playing well right now, who's taking some of those minutes from Davion. He was playing some good basketball going into the stretch. And I've been somebody in the camp of let's see what we have with Rashawn Holmes one more time. I mean, is it his last stint with the Kings? It very well could be. I think he has 2 more years on his deal after this year. The Kings are still not getting much production out of the backup center spot, and that's when that really needs to change again, because same issue with Fox. Sabonis is playing almost 40 minutes a night, and that just isn't sustainable to me. I mean, you don't want to ride these guys too hard because, I mean, God forbid they get a week out in the playoffs and hamstring or calf, whatever have you, just the grind of the season, it can wear down on these guys, especially when you lump in the fact that Fox and Sabonis didn't have much of an all-star break. You want to protect those guys. And Rashawn Holmes is somebody who's done it before. He hasn't gotten that much of a shot, and as bad as he looked early in the season, he's a guy that really benefits from the pick and roll. There should be some ways you can get by for 9, 10, 12 minutes a night, because what you're getting from Chemezi Metus right now, it fluctuates so much. And while he is somebody who can rim run and is very productive on the lob and somebody who has looked a little better, I know he's been chucking from 3, but some of the shots started to fall the other night in Phoenix. You just want something a little more sustainable and something a little more consistent. And right now, the backup center position just has not been consistent at all. So, yeah, I think that anybody in that second unit, a bad couple of games, changes could happen. That's how valuable and how precious these games are late in the season. But Mike Brown's a smart guy, and they have a good staff, and they'll find the right combination of players to make things work.
Frankie Cartoscelli is with us. Frankie, I know you got to run in a few minutes, but we got a couple more for you. We talked about defense earlier in the show, and I dug through some defensive numbers earlier today. Kind of interesting stuff. I mean, defensive rating, this team compared to last year, pretty much the same team. 24th last year, 22nd this year. They're worse this year, Frankie, in paint points. They're worse this year in opponent field goal percentage. They're worse this year in opponent three-point percentage. Any confidence at this point that they can actually improve on the defensive end enough, or this is what it is?
I mean, I like to have a little bit of faith that it can improve a little bit. I mean, to me, my honest opinion is it might be what it is. I mean, it is what it is. And it might come down to they need the right personnel to really make a change defensively next season. But you see it late in games. I think Deuce put out that stat earlier today about the fourth quarter, how much their defense improves late in games. You know it's there. I mean, you can see that it's there. And the intensity, of course, that's when it's at its peak late in the games and when the game's there for the taking. And credit to the Kings. They've been good in late game situations this year, more times than not. But you see it's there. It's just, can you do it early in the game? I mean, I'm looking back at the Dallas game. The Kings outscored the Mavericks in that first game of the back-to-back. They outscored them the Mavericks outscored them by 20 in the first quarter. The Kings won the final 3 quarters, but it didn't matter. They lost the game. And that's when De'Aaron Fox said at the end of the night, he said, if we could just kind of have that same defensive intensity early in the games, this wouldn't be happening. And it's happened a lot this year where the Kings have gone down early. I know the Knicks game in New York, they got outscored by 20, outscored the Knicks final 3 quarters. They're able to lock in when push comes to shove, but they need to have a little more, this sense of urgency. It needs to be more notable with them. And it comes down again to, can they lock in? Can they get it done? Can the guys on the floor be productive on the defensive end? I mean, we've seen some guys get, the blow-bys and whatnot. Can they limit those late in games? I think so. But to me, it's something that needs to be addressed in the off-season. Right now, it is what it is. You have guys like Casey Atpala, who was supposed to be one of their impactful defenders. He's been out due to injury. I'm not sure if he'd be really playing much of a role if he were on the roster right now. But if he was healthy, it'd be interesting to see if Mike Brown would throw him out there just to create stops when the Kings really need them, because they don't have many guys that are impactful defenders outside of Mitchell. So Maybe something else we're going to look forward to in the offseason. The Kings are very offense-oriented, and while I don't love the idea of having to outgun your opponents, maybe that's something the Kings should look to do over the last 25 games. I mean, they have a high-powered offense. They should use it and try to get stops when they can, but I wouldn't bank on too many significant changes happening in this short of a time period.
I'll start this thing on the opposite end of the spectrum I'll end this thing on the opposite end of the spectrum from where we started, Frankie. I asked you what would be good enough. That's just like the base. That's the bare minimum of what Frankie Cartoscelli would be happy with when it comes to the Kings. What's the ceiling for this team with 25 games in the playoffs left? How far do you think they could take this thing if all the chips fall in the right place?
I mean, as far as like where is the Kings' last game of the season?
Yeah. How high can they finish? How deep can they go? What's the ceiling for this Kings team with 25 games in the playoffs left?
Man, I think it really depends on the matchup in the first round. I think they could be a top 5 seed. I think that they can be a top 5 seed. Top 4, I think it's tough. I mean, I think it's possible. A lot would need to go right, and you need the Clippers to really kind of have some issues there with Kawhi or PG and just the meshing of all those big names they just brought in. But to me, I could see them, number one, being a top 5, top 6 seed. I'm looking at the 5 seed. That's one I really think would be nice. And I'm looking at a couple wins. I mean, I don't want to say they'll advance, but I'm looking at 2 wins in the first round of the playoffs. That would be really nice to me to see the Kings go 6 or 7, really have a real legitimate playoff series, not just a ticket to the playoffs and a thank you, goodbye, 4-round sweep or a gentleman sweep of 4, whatever, what have you. I want the Kings to get out there and compete and really have a true playoff atmosphere here at Golden One Center, have the real feel of the playoffs are back, playoff basketball is back in Sacramento after 16 years. I think they're good enough. I think they're good enough to be a top 5 seed and to get there. It's going to be all dependent on health. If they have this roster intact, to me, in my opinion, in mid-April, they're going to be there. It's just going to be, can they take care of business? I think they can. And, they're a good team. I think one thing I'm trying to remind myself, and I think people need to remind themselves too, is this team is good. This has not been a 20-game sample size anymore. We're almost to March. They're in it. And, let's all knock on wood together. It would take a collapse to fall out of it. And could that happen? Absolutely. It absolutely could happen. Crazier things have happened. But if this team is healthy, I have full confidence they're going to be there at the end of the season.
They better not lose tonight.
If they lose tonight, man. I mean, are you coming to the game?
No.
Are you coming to the game?
No.
No?
Staying far away from Golden One tonight.
JJ's coming to the game.
JJ's coming, and they're going to win. Nick's not coming. They're going to win.
Definitely. Sorry.
I feel confident. Never told one time.
Yeah, I get it done too each night.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
Well, Frankie, you just ruined your entire appearance.
Thank you, Frankie.
Enjoy your time tonight.
I made it this far. I made it so close. Thank you, guys.
Frankie. Thank you, buddy. Frankie Cartoscelli, Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Of course, Frankie, you can check out his work, SactownSports.com. Does some great stuff for us. You look, Ramie, at the game tonight, and text line 916-339-1140. This game scares me. Last time Dame was out when we played them, Kings got smoked. Again, it's not just Dame out tonight. It's right. Dame, it's Simons, it's Nurkic, it's Grant. Not just Dame Dalla. Text line, and this is something you asked me during a break, I think, Ron. What the heck is Portland doing? This is from the text. They need to win probably more than the Kings. Are they tanking? Says they lost twice like that to the Pels and the Sixers. Yeah, what are the Blazers doing?
It is. I mean, again, I understand the circumstances and guys sitting on a plane for 10 hours, and I guess there's risk for injury after doing that. I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
You said somebody might tear their ACL staying on a plane for a while.
I don't know. I know my knees are creaky after I've sat on a plane for a while.
Next step, ACL.
Exactly. Next step is ACL tear if I try to go out there and hammer down a tomahawk dunk. You know what I mean? Which I do from time to time.
Of course.
But it is weird that even with that being the case, you wouldn't go ahead and run that risk given where they sit in the playoff picture, isn't it?
Yes. It's very weird. And it's even more weird that they're doing this post All-Star break when they just had a rest. And look, Dame was in the 3-point contest. He played a few minutes in the game. He's used to that. That's nothing new. He actually was, he took part in a dunk contest years ago. So he knows the All-Star weekend schedule. And to my knowledge, nobody else, right, took part in anything for the Blazers. Shaedon Sharpe was supposed to be in the dunk contest, I do believe, but he bailed out last minute. So you have Grant and Lillard who are fully healthy, who are just not going to play. And I don't get it. I don't get it post All-Star break. I don't get it where the Blazers are. I mean, are they going to tank for Wembanyama and hope for the best? I don't know what they're doing.
I would. And not just if I'm the Blazers. If I'm anybody.
You just want to see that 7'5" gazelle run up and down the floor.
Yes, man. I told you guys on our call meeting yesterday, born and raised Chicagoan, lifelong Bulls fan. I can root for the Kings too, though. It's okay. I'm so mad at the Bulls that they're not just going to let this thing swirl down the toilet and get into Wembanyama sweepstakes that are doing things like going out and signing Pat Beverly to maybe get a play-in spot.
Get that 10th seed.
Why would anybody do that?
Makes a run.
With Victor Wembanyama on the board, why would anybody be making a push for a play-in spot? How stupid is any organization that's doing that right now?
Chicago has not been run great the last several years.
No.
As we know.
No.
So this kind of falls in line.
Since Michael Jordan, really. They stumbled into Derrick Rose, and he saved them for a few years.
Kind of stumbled into MJ.
I guess.
Should have gone one overall.
I guess, yeah. Sam Bowie is really good.
By the way, he was great. By the way, you asked Frankie about, what's reasonable down the stretch. Mr. All read everything, youtube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. Give us a thumbs up, like us. King should go 60-40 rest of the season. I don't know what that is. What's 25 times 0.6? Somebody figure that out? He says, no gelling required. Teams trying to catch them. I agree with the team. Teams are trying to catch them. And that's why I think
they'd win 15 more games.
So there'll be 15 and 10.
40,
15 and 10.
Just quick math
Simone
in my head.
confirms.
There we go. I did that all right up here.
I'd like to solve the puzzle.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, Simone.
We're all proud of you, Ramie.
Thanks, guys.
We are.
Appreciate it.
But here's the issue though. Going 15 and 10 to me. Look, I'm hoping for it. I'm rooting for it. I want it to happen. I want this team to go 20-5 the final 25. But they are playing the second toughest schedule in the Western Conference. They are 11-17 against teams that are 500 and above. We have to stay grounded in reality.
But you know what? Frankie said in there, more games on the road than at home. With this team, the way they've played at home
might not be bad.
Maybe not a bad thing. That maybe works in their advantage.
They have we shared this earlier. They have the most games left on the schedule, and they have the most back-to-backs.
Yep.
6 on the schedule. Tough. Patrick Donaldson, if we get to 45 wins and somehow still only get a play-in spot, I'm fine with it as long as we win the play-in and get into the playoffs. So that's the next step. Like if you fall out of the 6th spot and you finish with 45 wins, you best make it to the playoffs by winning that play-in game.
Yeah, I said
a couple playing games.
I've said before,
depending on where you are.
Playing would it'd be a bit of a letdown if they ended up in the play-in and not the playoff. But as long as they get through that, and
45 wins would be 13-12,
and into the playoffs, I'm good, man. I'm good. And I think most Kings fans would be too.
You just sounded like the guy from Oregon that runs the
Hey,
Hobbit-like structure.
Let's just get there, dude.
Yeah, I'm good, man.
If you can just get there,
I'm fine, man.
You're good.
No problems, man.
Find some inner peace.
Feeling good about it, man.
Come on, bro.
Found my center, man. Nice and dark in this room. Got a little prayer mat going. 300 square feet of pure silence and peace.
They described it like every college apartment ever. It's 300 square feet of mattress and a yoga mat.
Dude, I grew up, okay? When I was Riverside, Rhode Island, I was still in college during the off time in college. My mother lived in a 2nd floor, 1-bedroom apartment. I slept in the living room on a cot.
She couldn't even let you sleep on the couch. She's like, you're not putting an imprint on my couch.
Bring that roll-out bed for you, son.
I don't even think the couch was big enough, frankly. I didn't go on radio and talk about a retreat.
That was your retreat.
Yeah, my retreat was sleeping on the couch.
That's how you found your center.
That's it. When I was even younger, we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Cranston, Rhode Island, 2nd floor. There's a theme here. And I slept on a mattress on the floor. That's where we lived.
Yeah.
Me and my brother.
I did that too for a minute.
Me and my brother shared a mattress on the floor.
Yeah.
We didn't call it a retreat.
We have a lot in common.
I didn't find inner peace when I was sleeping on a mattress with my brother. There's no.
No, me neither.
It was like, dude,
Me
stay on your
neither.
side. Get
Yeah.
off me. What's happening here? Stop it. Can we go find a house? What's
no
happening?
Disrespect, but don't disrespect me.
The smells of two teenage boys in one bed, it's hard to find some inner peace.
No, I was younger. I was about.
Well, that's going
I had to
on.
be like 5 or 6 years old.
Even worse.
My brother was like 11, 12.
Even worse. You're not finding any inner peace
Not
while
great.
breathing that air.
Not great.
No,
Is that it?
that's all I got.
All right. Keegan is facing a different kind of pressure. We'll explain that coming up.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports. Sactown Sports goes 100% live and local.
From 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Still trying to figure that out.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Cava Casino, conveniently located 411 North 16th Street, downtown Sacramento. Keegan Murray, very important piece of the puzzle, Ramie, coming up here for the next, hopefully, fingers crossed, several years, but also the next 25 games as we finish this regular season starting tonight against the Blazers at Golden 1. And a couple of things stood out to me over the last few days listening to the Aaron Fox and Michael Scotto, who we had on the show yesterday, regarding Keegan. First, here's Foxy.
It's funny because I tell Keegan this a lot, and I'm like, Keegan, if we want to win the championship at some point, either you're going to be one of those guys or we're going to find one of those guys, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of, it's an extremely, wing-based league where most of the time, the better teams have, one of the better wings in the league, so.
I tell Keegan all the time, you got to be one of those guys, because if you're not, we're going to find one of those guys. I mean, that is as blunt as you can get from your team leader. And then we had Michael Scotto from Hoops Hype on yesterday, and here's what he had to say about Keegan.
For them, I still think, their ceiling is going to be determined in the future by the development of Keegan Murray. And if he can become somewhat of an all-star caliber player for them, if he can, then you really got something. If he becomes more of a role player, then you kind of have to go back to the drawing board and find maybe that third all-star, because it seems like nowadays that's what you need if you're going to be a title contender truly.
Two telling sound bites. And then Tom Dearberger today, Ramie, NBC Sports Bay Area, writes that Keegan needs to drain 51 threes over the Kings' final 25 games to set the all-time NBA rookie record.
Wow.
That is currently held by Donovan Mitchell.
Quick math, again, that's about 2 3-pointers per game with 25 left.
A lot less impressive than the first math.
Thank you.
Project you did.
Appreciate it.
When Murray is knocking down his shots, the Kings offense is unstoppable. Sacramento is a perfect 8-0 when Murray scores at least 20. They are 10-4 when he knocks down at least 4 threes, Ramie.
Yeah, I've been saying for a minute now, Nick, that he's the key. He's the key to unlocking another level for this Kings team. And I'm not alone in thinking that, apparently. Darren Fox thinks so. Michael Scotto thinks so.
Michael Scott, Dunder Mifflin.
From Dunder Mifflin, yes. It really is, I think, you often hear the expression, there are no rookies at this point of the season. This is the epitome of that. And that's in a roundabout way what De'Aaron Fox is telling Keegan Murray with that statement right there. Like, hey, rookie year is over. We have games to win at the professional level right now, and we need you to be a big part of that. And if it's not you, as he said, it'll be somebody else. And when they drafted Keegan Murray, and what we heard over and over and over again as far as his strength was most NBA ready, this is where you find out how true that is. And this is where that trait, that quality, which was the number one reason that we think they drafted him. They wouldn't come out and necessarily say that, but it's why we think they drafted him. This is where it becomes most useful to this Kings team, who had a win now mentality coming into the year. They took Keegan Murray for this reason.
Yeah.
So that they had a guy who was ready for this in his rookie year.
Every time I've talked about Keegan, about the rookie of the year thing, I've said, look, it's not going to happen. It's unlikely to happen because Keegan is on a team that's trying to win games, get to the playoffs, has several other options. He's not going to jack up 20 shots a night. He's not going to be able to, really puff up those stats on any given night like some of these other guys. But the other side, the flip side of that is this is a different kind of pressure. There's not much pressure on Paolo Banchero. There's not much pressure on Jaden Ivey as Detroit heads towards the Wembanyama sweepstakes. There is legitimate pressure on Keegan Murray because Keegan is playing for a team, as I just mentioned, trying to win games, trying to get to the playoffs. And he's got Fox telling him, hey, man, look, if you ain't the third guy on this team, then we got to go find that third guy. It's entirely up to you. You have to make that decision with your play. And so this is a very atypical rookie season for anybody who gets drafted in the top 5 or 6, which tells you how good of a job Monty did in the offseason.
Yeah, you don't see this. Guys are drafted that high because they're going to terrible teams.
And then you think about the schedule coming up, the rookie wall we always talk about, the adjustments teams are always constantly making, the focus from teams now as this gets closer to the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
lots of pressure on Keegan. And we all have our eyes on him, hoping that he certainly comes through. He's played big in big games in college. Can he give that level that Fox wants him to give as we get closer to a postseason? Up next, the chilling story that has taken over the sports world.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Sacramento weather is brought to you
1 mile at a time during the afternoon drive. Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
I'm going to stand up. Making the executive decision. Back up. Back up. Fix this microphone here like this. All right.
You want me to stand again? Last time you were offended,
No,
you
you're
were
fine.
standing, and I was.
You're uncomfortable
okay.
today.
I am.
I want you to do what makes you feel comfortable.
Thank you.
Let's get to this serious story here for a couple minutes. We haven't. We'll get back to the Kings in about 10, 15 minutes. But we wanted to talk about one of the. I don't know how to explain this, Ramie. I don't know how to define this with one word. This Brandon Miller story in
Sad,
Alabama.
heartbreaking,
horrific,
tragic. All those work.
Awful, ridiculous.
They all work.
Now, Brandon Miller, I know you're not a big college basketball guy, Ramie. You're not a big draft guy until after the season's over and you start looking at stuff. And
even that being said, I'd heard the name even before this.
yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean?
This guy is a top 3 pick on a lot of mock drafts. He is. You've got Wembanyama, you've got Scooter, and then you've got pretty much Brandon Miller. And he plays for Alabama. Bama is the second-ranked team in the country right now for Nate Oates. And this is just again, horrific story, tragic. This is from AL.com, which is a website in Alabama, covers a lot of Alabama sports stories. Carol Robinson wrote this in part. Alabama's freshman basketball standout Brandon Miller brought the gun used on the Tuscaloosa strip killing of a woman that led to capital murder charges for his now former teammate Darius Miles and 20-year-old Michael Buzz Davis, according to law enforcement testimony. Again, Brandon Miller brought the gun that was used in the killing of a woman that led to capital murder charges for his former teammate Darius Miles and 20-year-old Michael Buzz Davis. Miles contacted Miller and asked him to bring his gun to where they were, so according to police. The gun, if you're wondering, belonged to Miles, not Miller. When Miller got to the scene, Miles told Davis, quote, "The heat is in the hat." Detective Brandon Culpepper said that meant that a gun was present. Miller's windshield was struck twice by gunfire in the shooting. Another Alabama basketball player, Jaden Bradley, was also at the scene of the shooting, according to testimony. Asked by AL.com why Miller was not charged. He has not been charged with any crime. The Tuscaloosa Chief Deputy DA Paula Whitley said, quote, "That's not a question I can answer. There's nothing we could charge him with." Kind of weird that she said it's a question I can't answer, and then she seemingly answered it by saying there's nothing that we could charge him with. According to the law, she said. So this is a story of Brandon Miller, likely top 3 pick NBA draft this June. Apparently gives the gun in this shooting that resulted in the death of this woman to his buddy Darius Miles. Miles owned the gun. And then Michael Buzz Davis takes part in this shooting as well. And now all of this comes out, and Brandon Miller not going to be charged with much of anything. He actually played in a game last night, which we'll get to in a couple of minutes. But he actually played last night against South Carolina. First, Ramie, before I get your thoughts, let's hear from head coach Nate Oates. This was on Tuesday when this first became public that Miller was involved to this extent. Here's Oates.
The whole situation's sad. I mean, you just think of it, the team closed practice with a prayer for the situation today. Again, knowing that we had this trial today, I mean, you think of Jameer, her family, Kane, the only thing about her son Kane that was left behind. So it's sad. We knew about that. I mean, can't control everything anybody does outside of practice. Nobody knew that was going to happen. College kids are out. Brandon hasn't been in any type of trouble, or any type of trouble in this case, like the wrong spot at the wrong time. So we'll address it. I'm sure NBA scouts will ask. They do everyone, but yeah, I only think the article that it came out and also stated Brandon's been interviewed. He's, they're comfortable with everything that happened there.
So a couple of things. I know that's not the clearest sound, but it's the best that we could get. There was something wrong with Alabama's sound system and YouTube channel, all that stuff. So a couple things out of that. He says, first, you can't control everything that happens away from the court.
Which is true.
He then says, something along the lines of, kids, college kids, as if this is just like a college kid mistake.
These are things that you say, like when a kid goes to a bar or a frat party,
gets into a fist fight
one
or something.
too many, gets into a fist fight, or does something stupid like that.
And so he then kind of says, well, doesn't kind of say, he does say, Miller hasn't been in any trouble before, and as the story said, he's not going to be charged with anything. So it certainly came across as Oates sweeping this under the rug as best and as quickly as he could. Now, Oates, after the game last night, he apologized, and whether you want to call it an excuse or a reason, here's what Oates had to say about what he said on Tuesday.
I'm not here to make excuses, but I want to make it clear that I didn't have the details from the hearing that morning since I was coming straight from practice, and I used a poor choice of words, making it appear like I wasn't taking this tragic situation seriously, which we have throughout the course of it. I sincerely apologize for that. I know Greg shared some information earlier today on the situation. I don't really have anything more to add other than what he's already shared.
I've repeated this over and over again on this show, Nick. I'm not here to throw away anybody.
Right.
People aren't disposable. And I'm not here to throw any to jump to any conclusions, throw anybody in jail, or do anything that would alter or change their life without due process. You know what I mean? Brandon Miller hasn't been charged with anything to this point.
Right.
Sure looks to me, looks to you like he maybe aided and abetted in a murder. I don't know. Like when somebody says, bring me my gun, and you bring him the gun, and then somebody gets murdered with that gun, there's a chain that links you to this crime, this horrific crime that happened. First of all, Alabama swept this under the rug and weren't going to say anything about Brandon Miller's involvement in this until it was released uncovered and put out there by the press that he had involvement in this thing.
Correct.
And this goes back to something we see time and time again with college programs, which is covering stuff up because you think it's going to look bad for your program instead of doing what's right from the start. And I'm not saying Brandon Miller should be kicked out of the program or his life should be ended. But man, how about this dude doesn't play basketball for a few days until you hash this thing out and figure out what exactly his involvement is and what steps you take from there. Sure does seem like, I know, shocker, a big-time college sports program is putting sports before decency, common sense, and logic. You know what I mean?
Story came out on Tuesday. He played last night. So just over 24 hours after the story came out, telling everybody that he was involved in some kind of way, he's out there playing a basketball game against South Carolina. By the way, he ended up scoring 41 points and made the game-winning bucket for the team in overtime. And I don't know if that makes Alabama feel justified for the decision that they made to have him play last night, because they don't win that game if he doesn't play, which is going into what you're saying. Would this treatment be the same if Brandon Miller wasn't Brandon Miller?
Yep.
If this was the 12th guy on the team, the 8th guy on the team, even the 5th guy on the team. But Brandon Miller is a top 3 pick in the NBA draft likely. So there's going to be no time to wait and breathe like you suggest. There's going to be no time to say, look, we're going to hold him out for a game or two and figure out what's going on. He's not even going to be punished. This isn't a punishment. This is more just like we're trying to get the facts in order. We're talking to Brandon. We're figuring this thing out, right? Something. But the fact that less than 24 hours or about 24 hours later, this guy's out there playing basketball like it's no big thing. And his coach is out there saying, hey, kids do kids things. College kids do college kids things. And the fact that Nate Oates said last night in his apology, I didn't know the facts. Well, how about this? How about you don't talk about it then? How about you don't talk about it until you get the facts?
How about gather all the facts before you go to a microphone?
Which tells me that he,
also,
how concerned was he in trying to find those facts? I'm sure he heard that a story came out.
I don't believe him that he didn't know all the facts.
Oh, that could be the case too.
This kind of stuff gets to a coach. You know what I mean? They have people all over campus. They have tentacles all over campus,
especially when it's a guy who's going to be the third pick.
And they're getting reports on them constantly. And when something like this goes down, you can be sure that the coach is having people report to him any details and developments that happen in this thing. I don't believe that for 1 second. That the way that this thing was handled by Alabama is the only thing that we know. Like Brandon Miller's involvement, again, I'll let the courts hash that all out and let him have his due process and innocent until proven guilty. The one thing I know went wrong in this thing was Alabama's handling of it.
Yeah.
And the way that they tried to sweep it under the rug and put basketball before decency.
Back to the Kings with the top spot coming up next.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today? So you've got an oil change coming up.
Cattles and Ramie.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Yes, the NBA is back in our life. Tonight, game night coming up in less than a half hour. The Flyer with you, Scott Marsh. And if you haven't heard, Blazers missing a bunch of dudes.
Yes. Mic check. Third one today. Yes. Missing all the dudes, including that dude.
Yeah. Dame Dollar out. Simon's out. Nurkic out. Grant out. But as we get ready, 25 games left, Ramie. 25 games left. 3 seed. Feeling pretty good about where the Kings are right now, but it's pretty tough road ahead. Pretty tough road ahead for your Sacramento Kings. And Tom Dearberger wrote about this in NBC for NBC Sports Bay Area on the schedule. Most total games remaining, most back-to-backs left among all Western Conference teams. Kings are 5-4 in the second night of a back-to-back. They own the second hardest remaining strength of schedule in the West. Their upcoming opponents have combined for a .520 win percentage. We've gone over the fact that this team has not done a good job, Ramie, of taking care of business against teams above 500 and above. And so tonight, a game like tonight, you've got to do what you've got to do to take care of business, especially with all these guys out. And as Frankie Cartoscelli, who joined us in the 4 o'clock hour, you can check that out at SactownSports.com in the podcast section. Frankie mentioned, these games have not always been easy for the Kings. When you look at this kind of schedule that they're going to face, it is paramount, absolutely paramount to, take care of the business that you can take care of. And part of that is being at home. They have not been the best home team. So just your thoughts, your general thoughts as we get ready for this final 25. You'll be playing against the Celtics, the Bucks, the Nuggets. You play twice against the Suns. 15 of your final 25 are against teams 500 or better.
I don't know if Kings fan trauma is rubbing off on me, Nick, because I came here optimistic.
You're a little less confident as the show goes on.
I came here and saying, yeah, they can do this.
Easy work.
Even I didn't think when the season started they could do this.
Light work.
Like where they're at right now. I picked them to win 40 games before the season started. More optimistic than most, but it looks like they're going to do at least 40 at this point. But then I let my optimism go to yet another level, Nick. And I said, you know what? 50 games. This team is going to win 50 games.
You did say they're going to win 50.
Put that on the record. And the JJs and the Chris Verlads of the world were looking at me with that side eye like, take it easy. Pump the brakes a little bit there. Pump the brakes a little bit there.
Pump that back a little bit.
Pump that back.
And I didn't. I haven't. I refused to pump the brakes.
This is true.
And that...
Your refusal shocked me.
Yes. Then I sat down and I looked at the schedule and the things that you reeled off there. And I don't know. I suddenly, I don't know if this is just naturally what happens from following the Kings on a day-to-day basis. Got a little nervous.
Did hope meet reality?
I got a little nervous about my 50-win prediction
right.
that I put on the record as we do every Friday and keep track of those predictions when we put them on the record. I don't know if 50 is realistic at this point, man. And honestly, at this point, I don't need 50. I don't need to be right all the time. I'm not here to be right. I'm here to be entertaining. Weekdays, 2 to 6 on Sactown Sports. It's gonna be a tough road to hoe from here on out.
Difficult.
Stay in the top 6. Give me 13 wins in these last 25, given all the challenges that come in with the schedule with these last 25 games. Give me 13 wins in these last 25. That will get you, quick math, to 45 wins on the season.
There you go.
And that should land you in the top 6. Even if it doesn't, I'll be all right with it. I'll be all right with it. Let the chips fall where they may. Get me 13 wins, and let's see where that lands you. And then we'll take it from there and get into the playoffs.
I've been thinking about this throughout the show. We talk about Mike Brown and the impact he's had with this team and why he was brought in, because he was the seasoned veteran coach. He coached LeBron. He coached Kobe. Been there, done that. He understands, as being part of the Warrior staff, what it takes to win a championship, watching Steve Kerr and the job that he's done with Golden State. And, as much of a great job as Coach Brown has done up to this point, and he has done a great job. Again, 3rd seed, I don't think anybody anticipated that happening. But this is really where Coach Brown's going to make that money. Because Coach Brown he talked with Anthony Slater in The Athletic about, being hunted and being that team that a lot of teams underneath you are looking up at and saying, all right, they're in our crosshairs. And the guys on this roster have not been in that situation very often. Many of them have not been in that situation at all. Coach Brown, his experience, I think over the next 25 games, it's going to be up to him to prove his worth here and to get these guys prepared for the monumental challenge that they're about to approach. And I'm not going to sit there and say, look, if they don't shoot well, they don't play well, it's all on Coach Brown. But this is why you don't bring in a rookie head coach. This is why you bring in a guy who's handled a lot of difficult challenges throughout his NBA career for moments like this.
Yeah, and we've talked throughout the show, Nick, about Mike Brown's interview with The Athletic that you tweeted out. Folks should go and read it. You can find it at Nick C Radio. See, I had it that time.
I know.
You didn't have to tell me. But his whole thing about being the hunted right now and having a target on their back, not how I would word it, but that's just semantics. I would say you're fighting in a different weight class right now. You're going to take harder punches than what you've taken previously in the season because you're not flying under anyone's radar here after winning 32 games before the All-Star break.
You're not sneaking up on people.
Being the third seed and facing a bunch of teams that have as much on the line, if not more than you do for these last 25 games. And there's going to be a little desperation and a little urgency from these teams that you're going against, and you're going to get their best shot just about each and every night here in the last 25. And so while I might not have worded it as a hunted or having a target on your back, I think Mike Brown's sending that message and letting these guys know, hey, there is no let up. Because you're the third seed right now, don't feel like you accomplished something. Things only get harder. Things only get tougher from here. And I think that's the perfect message for Mike Brown to send, however he words it.
And you start to see some of these things, right, over the next 25 games. Defensively, we know this team hasn't been its best. 22nd in defensive rating. They've opposing field goal percentage down the bottom of the league, opposing three-point percentage down at the bottom of the league. And now that challenge is, hey, you not only have to play better defensively, you have to play much better defensively because you are now going against teams that are much better. And Coach Brown pointed this out in that Athletic article about how they had a favorable schedule. So you have to play at a level defensively that is able to battle back and keep these opposing offenses slow down. The Bostons, the Milwaukees, the Phoenixes, these teams above 500. And offensively, the challenge is going to be, Ramie, as you get closer to the postseason, I've been preaching this for the last month and a half. As you get closer to the postseason, teams figure it out. Teams that have been there focus. They play more possessions like their life is on the line. They will challenge you more. Their defense will be better. So these shootings, ebbs and flows that we've seen, they need to settle down. And they need to bring some consistency to their three-point shooting over the final 25 because I'm telling you right now, the teams they're facing, they're going to play some really tough defense. And I don't know if you could just bank, oh, yeah, they're going to drop 120 tonight. They got to be better.
And the teams they're facing, and Mike Brown pointed out, you don't have a lot of, if any, experience in dealing with what they're going to deal with here down the stretch, the intensity and the urgency of these teams that they're going to face. When you look at the rest of the Western Conference, Nick, and the teams that are going to be jockeying for position and trying to leapfrog the Kings, they're stacked with guys who have been there and done that in terms of high-pressure situations and much more high-pressure situations than this. You got Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Kyrie Irving. You're talking about guys who've played in and won NBA Finals series and made deep playoff runs if they haven't at least done that. The Kings don't have that type of experience with that type of intensity. And I think that will be, to me, the number one challenge. And it sounds like Mike Brown knows that for everything else, for all the back-to-backs, all the road games, all the above 500 teams, I think just that intensity and facing that and not crumbling in the face of that is the biggest challenge that this team has down the stretch.
It is 5:12. That time check is brought to you by Coastside Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. We just took the big picture, 30,000 feet look about the next 25 games. Well, coming up next in about 90 seconds, we'll break down the next 10 games for this team and what we think.
Cattles
and Ramie.
Sactown Sports. Only place you'll find Malik Monk is Sactown Sports.
Oh my, what an athletic move that time by Malik Monk.
On Sactown Sports.
Capital Casino is conveniently located on 411 North 16th Street in downtown Sacramento. Also want to remind you all guests coming from the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline, Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Ramie, wanted to get into the game tonight, but I feel like there's a lot less to break down because there's no Dame, there's no Simons, there's no anybody. Grant, there's no Nurkic. So
I'll say this about tonight's game.
I'm bummed that we don't have the Fox versus Dame match.
Same. It's a must win in the sense that if you lose this, it's embarrassing and it's one of those that you're going to look back at and go,
terrible loss.
That should have been a win. And in a tight race where one
New
loss,
Orleans, Charlotte, Washington, one of those games.
One loss might cost you a spot in the stand, might cost you a home game or whatever the case might knock you from the playoff to the play-in or even worse. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's a must win in that sense. And not only,
I want to stop for a second though, because that is a great point to acknowledge and embrace how big these games are going to be.
Yes.
Like this is not just, oh, well, we're playing Portland in game 35, and if we lose, we lose. These are the types of games, Ramie, that you have to take advantage of. If you want to try to finish around 500 over these final 25 games to keep your spot solidified in the top 6, this is the game you need.
Not only should they win this game, they should win it so easily, Nick, that they can sit Domas and Fox and some of these other guys for much of the fourth quarter and get them some of that rest that we've been talking about them so desperately needing with as many minutes as they played in the first half. Take advantage of this. Take advantage of this and don't just get an easy win. Make it easy and give your guys a break. And let's take as many minutes off the sheet for them as you possibly can with every single minute and every single game, meaning so much down the stretch here.
Even more important because you play tomorrow night.
Yep.
This is the first of a back-to-back.
Yep.
And it's LA. It's a quick trip, but still. And not only that, you then travel to Oklahoma City to play on Sunday. So you have a 3 games and 4 nights with 2 plane trips involved. You're absolutely right. You want to make sure that you're not pressing your guys tonight against a team that is going to be playing Shaedon Sharpe and a bunch of guys.
Don't make this harder than it needs to be.
You can't. You can't let that happen. You can't allow it. And, Portland, they're 28-30, the 12th seed in the Western Conference, 2 games under 500. Take care of business. Don't play with your food. All of these guys are out. Get it done.
You're better than them when they're healthy. They're missing a few of their best players. You should be able to run them off the court tonight.
Yeah. On top of that, you'd like to see, did the break help out Davion mentally? Does he look like a different guy? We talked to Frankie earlier in the show, Frankie Cartoscelli, and I asked Frankie if it felt like Davion's leash was getting tightened a little bit by Coach Brown because, Davion has averaged about 18 minutes a game this year. But the last 4 games before the All-Star break, he was giving you 10, 12 minutes. That's what he was giving you.
Mm-hmm.
And so his minutes have dropped. And if it continues where Davion's giving you nothing offensively, I would not be surprised, even though he gives you a good amount defensively. At a certain point, he's got to give you something on the other end. So, does Davion come out with a little bit of renewed life tonight? Does Coach Brown try to give Rashawn Holmes a few minutes tonight? Because, I've said over the last couple of days, I would not be against giving Holmes at least one more try at this. And if you got to tweak a couple of things offensively so he feels more like a part of things when Domas is out, then that's what you might have to do.
I don't know what you got to lose in giving Rashawn Holmes a chance to grab that backup center role, or at least some kind of role in the rotation as one of the guys in the backup center rotation.
Right.
I don't know what you got to lose at this point, having tried everything at that position already.
So that's tonight's game. Again, this is one of those that you got to take care of business. Don't mess around.
Win it and win it easy.
And it's even more important because we talked about the 25 games and what that looks like in the big picture. Lots of games against good teams. Looking at the next 10 games, let's go through this, Ramie. You got Portland tonight again. That should be a win. You got to win this game. Tomorrow night against the Clippers. And now the Clippers, they're in a very interesting spot. They are very similar to you in many ways when it comes to record and how they've played, at home and how they've played against teams that are 500 or above. The Clippers are the only team that has a worse record than you do in the top 12 teams in the league. When it comes to playing against teams 500 or better, the Clippers have been worse. And, at home, the Clippers have not been good. They're 15-13. So you've been better than the Clippers at home this year. I would hope that the Kings tomorrow going in would be 18-12 at home. So they've had some issues, but we just had the All-Star break. You got Kawhi, you got PG-13. Russell Westbrook
just added Russ
is going to play. He will be a Clipper and out there tomorrow night, I would imagine. Mason Plumlee, I swear if Mason Plumlee goes for like 20 and 12, I'm going to break furniture. You got Plumlee out there. So this is a very hungry Clippers team. They are currently one game behind you. They are the 4th seed in the Western Conference. That's a big game tomorrow night. Second game of a back-to-back.
And that's going to be your first taste of that intensity, that urgency that we were talking about with a team that's right on your heels and a team that has guys who have been there and done it before in these types of situations where you're in the hunt for a playoff spot and you're jockeying for position in the standings. They know what this is. The Kings don't.
Yeah.
So that's their first test of what Mike Brown was talking about right there.
And then you stay on the road. As I mentioned last segment, you've got Oklahoma City on Sunday. So you go to Oklahoma City on Sunday. You stay in Oklahoma City to play them again on Tuesday. Oklahoma City, a very interesting team. A lot of people did not expect much from them, but they're almost at 500. They're 28-29. They're a team that plays well at home. They're 17-12 at home. So they're pretty dangerous. They're almost 500 against the Western Conference at 15-17. And that's a team, again, if you mess around with them, they can beat you. Yep. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is legitimate. This team is deep. They're a fun team to watch. They like to, hustle and scrap and grab loose balls, 50-50 balls and offensive rebounds and all that stuff. So the back-to-back games against OKC, not easy.
Those are games you should win. You're better than them. But that's a young, talented team, Nick, that when they get going, they can put some runs together.
And then you come back home and you face the Clippers again. And we don't need to rehash everything we just said, but
let's just repeat what we just said 4 minutes ago.
You've got the Clippers. So you got the Clippers, OKC, Clippers after tonight. Then you've got Minnesota. Minnesota is a team 5-5 in their last 10.
Are they getting Cat back anytime soon?
I don't know. It's a good question. Not sure.
I haven't heard anything about Cat in a minute. Maybe I just missed it. Maybe it just flew off my radar.
So you got the Timberwolves, and that game is here at Golden 1, but that game is the second night of a back-to-back. So when you get back from Oklahoma City, you play the Clippers, and then the very next night you play the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves, another team, 8 seed, 31-30, nipping at your heels. You are currently 3 games ahead of them. Who knows where you will be once we get to that game on March 4th, on that Saturday. Then you've got the Pelicans here at Golden One on Monday night following the T-Wolves game. And that won't be easy. The Pelicans, 7th seed, 3 games behind you currently, 30-29. And, I don't think Zion will be back. I just never expect him to be back. But the Pelicans are another good team with Ingram and McCollum and others. Difficult. That team beats you without Ingram, without Valanciunas, and without Zion by what, 30?
Yep.
Very tough team to match up. So you get the back-to-back second night against Minnesota after the Clippers, and you play the Pelicans. The Knicks is a game you should win, I would imagine. That's one of those that you've got to take care of business. You've got to beat the Knicks here at Golden One. It's similar to the Portland game tonight. And then the last 2 games, Ramie, on this 10-game snapshot, you go to Phoenix, and KD is expected to be back by next week. You will go to Phoenix to play right now a fully functional, powered Phoenix team with KD, and then you come back here to play against the Milwaukee Bucks, and Giannis, I would imagine, would likely be back at that point as well.
You'd think so. He's sort of day-to-day right now.
I mean,
by the
that
way,
is
no timetable on Cat's return. We asked about
Minnesota on the second night of a back-to-back, the Pelicans, and then you got the Knicks, which you should get by, but then at Phoenix and then against Milwaukee.
So 10 games, 9 of those 10 are against teams that are in the playoff or play.
If you go 4-6, you should be very happy.
Really, you're saying 4-6?
You should be very happy with 4-6.
I mean, I guess I'm not that far off. I'm saying give me 500. It's kind of what I'm saying about the whole 25 game stretch to close out the season. Give me 500.
Portland
in these next 10.
Portland, at least 1 at OKC.
Mm-hmm.
The Knicks, and you got to give me maybe one of the Clippers games. Minnesota, yeah, they could go 5-5.
No Cat, and they should be able to take.
They should
Minnesota.
be able to. I would bank on more Minnesota, that being a win than the Clippers games. 5-5, 4-6.
Give me 5 of these.
5-5, I would be very happy. 4-6, I'd say acceptable over the next 10. But it's that is just that is.
I'm so glad there's basketball tonight.
Oh, I love it.
Man,
that's a small that's a small example of what the next 25 games is going to look like.
It's gonna be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Hopefully, it's just fun.
Bringing back Dubs.
Not painful. Hopefully, it's all just fun.
Better bring back Dubs. That's all I know. Simone and JJ behind the glass. Great job as always. Ramie, back tomorrow. Talk about this game and much more.
Yes,
Until then, it's Cattles and Ramie on Sactown Sports.
I'm good. I think most Kings fans would be too.
You just sounded like the guy from Oregon that runs the Hobbit-like structure.
Let's just get there, dude.
Yeah, I'm good, man.
If you can just get there.
Fine, man.
Good.
No problem, man.
Find some inner peace.
Feeling good about it. Come on, bro. Found my center, man. Nice and dark in this room. Got a little prayer mat going. 300 square feet, sheer silence and peace.
They described it like every college apartment ever. It's 300 square feet, a mattress, and a yoga mat.
Dude.
Remember what I taught you. Keep your heart 3 stacks. Keep your heart. Hey, keep your heart 3 stacks. Keep your heart. Man, these girls are smart. 3 stacks. These girls are smart.